Okay, we'll get the meeting started. I have a motion moved by Sam McInell, second by Martin Lane. Be it resolved that the April 20th, 2020 council meeting of the Township of South Glengarry now be opened at 7:01 p.m. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you. At this time, I would ask that we take a moment in silence for the unfortunate tragedy in Nova Scotia, if we would, please. Thank you. Our thoughts and prayers go out to the victim and all their families at this time. I have a motion. Oh, sorry. We'll stand for the singing of our national anthem. I'll ask Kaylin to play the national anthem. Thank you. Thank you. I have a motion moved by Stephanie Jaworski, seconded by Lyle Warden. Be resolved that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry approve the agenda. Any additions to the agenda, Madam Clerk?
I believe we are pulling a report from the agenda this evening. Should be number 6. The pickup truck.
Okay, so we're removing that for this evening.
Yep.
Okay, and I see Councillor Jaworski had her hand up.
Yes, please. If we could move out of for information only, if we could move up the mental update to council, as well as the leaf and yard waste item, please.
So number 1 and 2.
Yes, please.
So that'll be now.
We'll move those
4 and 5.
4 and 5 under other business. Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
We might as well deal with the budget dates as well for Lachlan, and I'd support that resolution for electronic delegations as well.
Okay, so the budget dates, I guess we're only a concern is if we had a concern. But we can just bring it up very quickly, I suppose.
Well, yeah, it's good to put it in our calendar now, and if it has to be updated, it has to be updated.
All right, so the budget dates would be number 6, and I'm sorry, the other one was what? Oh, the number 5?
Yeah.
So that'll be number 7.
And also, other business, we'll be speaking to that CIP. That's another business, right? That doesn't need to be pulled out.
It's another business, correct? Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else from members of council? Not hearing none, so the motion would be as amended. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you. Any declaration of pecuniary interest? I have one this evening. I will declare under the staff report number 5, as I'm living in one of the properties, one of the subject properties in regards to the docks in Glenwolf. So I'll ask Deputy Mayor Warden to take that portion of the meeting at that time. Okay, thank you. Any other declarations of pecuniary interest? Not hearing none. Approval of the minutes. I have a motion moved by Martin Lang, second by Stephanie Jaworski. Be resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of the Council of the Township of South Glengarry held on April 6, 2020 be adopted as circulated. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. I have a motion moved by Sam McDonnell, second by Lyle Warden. Be resolved that the minutes of the special meeting of the Council of the Township of South Glengarry held on April 6, 2020 be adopted as circulated. All in favor of the motion? Thank you. Carried. Presentation, delegations, nothing this evening. New business, staff reports, amend interim tax bylaw 2020. Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just would like to preface this by saying today the county has moved their second installment of the interim tax date from May to June. And if council wishes to do this, we should defeat or defer this motion. I'll refer to the wording to our clerk, Mrs. MacDonald. If that's the will of council, then we should defeat or defer this motion. I'll come back to next meeting to push our May installment to June if that's the will of council.
Mr. McDonald, can you turn your volume up a little bit, maybe on your microphone? Can you hear me?
I heard you, Frank. Lachlan,
Yeah.
can you, yeah?
Just
Can you-
speak louder, Lachlan.
Okay, sorry. So council of the county council met and they moved the tax interim date, the second due date, from May to June. If we wish to correspondingly move, we should defeat or defer this motion. I'll leave the wording to clerk Mrs. McDonald, and therefore we'll come back with another reading or a new revised bylaw next meeting. Because if we're going to make that change, this bylaw is worded improperly.
Okay, any comments from members of council? Deputy Mayor Warden?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, is questions for the clerk. Can this bylaw just be amended to add also the May 31st to June 30th? And then we can just pass it tonight and it's dealt with, or does it have to come back? Because I'm in favor of deferring our second payment as well to kind of fall in line with how the county proceeded today.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I think it would be preferable to bring it back, as Lachlan mentioned, only because for the May 31st due date, it will be well ahead of that, so everyone will be notified. And it does improve the wording if we do it not as a friendly amendment, but as a revised bylaw.
We still have lots of time in regards to our next meeting, so to bring it up at the next council meeting, if we can, please. Any other comments in regards to the tax bill? Councillor McDonnell, then Councillor Jaworski, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. For the most part, I was just wondering, Mr. McDonald, are we holding our April 30th due date for the current, the one that we've already deferred by a month?
Presently, that's the plan, yes. Unless council.
That's the motion on the table tonight.
Okay, subsequently, are we, or what's the plan for interest after that? Are we going to be charging interest to people, or are we just going to be asking that they pay and then we put off interest, say to, I don't know, the next interim date? I know we don't want to dig people into a hole, but there are people that I've had contact me that won't be able to pay their property taxes as it is.
Okay, so the first thing would be to address that we moved it from March to April. That movement delayed eliminated the April interest, which costs about $40,000 per month for interest on outstanding arrears. Additional to that, there would be interest charged in May, but not June with this current one. So that would be another $40,000 of arrears interest that would be forgiven or not put on the accounts.
So Lachlan, what you're saying, interest would be charged in May for if people don't pay by April 30th.
Correct.
And the bill for May, there'd be no interest charged until the end of June.
Correct.
So subsequent, I guess, to that is when you say interest, are you talking that we're waiving all interest on all tax accounts, or is this just 2020 tax accounts?
This would be all outstanding arrears, and in Vadim, we're not the only municipality to have to do that. So it puts an interest hold on all accounts. So nobody would have paid interest in April, and that amounts to about $40,000.
But anybody that's in arrears would be charged interest in May if they don't pay their bill by April 30th.
Correct.
Okay.
Is that what you're looking for, Councillor McDonald?
For the most part, yeah. I guess, is there any appetite for around the table for current 2020 tax bills? So bills that will be due, I guess, in 10 days from now. Is there any appetite to postpone those interests on it and continue with the other interest?
The question I would have to Mr. McDonald then, do you know what the numbers would be in dollar amounts in regards to what we would lose if we just held off interest on 2020?
Not exactly, because it's just like we looked at what we've lost in interest. If 40,000 is for all outstanding arrears.
Right.
It would be a portion of that. I don't know exactly how much at that present time.
Interesting to know that number before we make that the decision, because I mean, we can't keep losing money as a municipality either. And I can appreciate and understand where you're going in regards to trying to help the people as much as we can, but we still have to pay bills here too. It's a difficult one.
I agree. I just think if we do give that option, I think people will pay their bills if we put the due date, but even if we give them a month to some people to just clean up before the next interim, we don't want to dig them into too big a hole, but at the same time, it's just a little grace period. Never hurt anyone. Okay.
I have the other three members of council want to speak on this, so maybe we can come back to that too if we have to. Councillor Jaworski, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. McDonald, for the staff report. I'm in favor of following what the counties have done. So to postpone the May until the end of June. And if there is a way of split out previous tax arrears from 2020 tax arrears, I think that's the main purpose of what we're trying to do here is we're trying to help people who are impacted by COVID and the specific, situation we're under today, as opposed to, previous issues. So if we can split it out, I'd like to do that. But if not possible, then I think we just have to proceed as we have been. But my question to you, Mr. McDonald, is how many people have approached you with regard to needing property tax deferral?
I personally have dealt with 2 individuals, 1 company and 1 person who have, those are on the monthly program, who had made some requests. In addition to that, there's been about 2 to 4 more people contact me through Aaron, our receptionist. So those 2 to 4 other ones said, what is the appetite of council? And I said, well, we're having a meeting today and I can get back to them where they've asked that.
So what are the 2 to 4 people saying or asking?
They were saying, will council be pushing back the April due date, and will interest be forgiven for another month?
Okay. Anything further, Councillor Jaworski?
Were those individual accounts or were they commercial accounts?
One of the first 2 that have asked for deferment, one of them was commercial. The other one in that instance was residential, and then the 2 to 4 were residential as well.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lang, and then Deputy Mayor Warden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. I'm going to agree with following the county's lead on this, and along with what Councillor McDonnell and Councillor Jaworski had said. I was under the impression that when we were deferring the interest, we were deferring 2020's interest, not interest that may have been from past years of somebody that may not have paid in the past. I didn't realize we were deferring all of it. So my thing is, if it can be separated out, I'd like to give the people a break, for this year. But if it's something that's in past years that was owing, I wasn't looking to defer that interest. Thanks.
And that was clear through council. It's just with that, and we were unable to do it. So we did the best thing was to forgive it rather than not forgive it. But you are right. The intention of council was for 2020 taxes. It's just that we weren't able to do that. But we will again try for Councillor Jaworski and Councillor Lang's comment.
Okay, thank you. We'll hear Deputy Mayor Warden.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, my thoughts are just we'll know at the next meeting where we stand in regards to how many people needed more than the 30 days. And again, I do believe the intent was to help out those affected by the COVID. So maybe if this is something that's going to be with us for a while, we'll have to separate the two and waive interest for this period of time and keep tacking it on for previous unpaid taxes. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I guess my question is to the clerk. Do we need to change this motion, or can we bring that back in May in respect of not charging interest for the 2020?
I think it would be better to bring it back at the next meeting.
Okay, so is that what council is looking for in regards to just waiving the interest on the 2020 only? And if there's interest to be charged from 2019 or previous, that it would continue going on?
Yes.
Just for 2020 due to the COVID-19?
Correct.
Radel, if you could bring that back to our next meeting?
Yes, I will.
And if you can, if somebody does call and you can notify them, I guess that it is coming to our next council meeting, but as of April 30th or May 1st, we will not be charging interest at this point until council makes a decision at our next meeting. Okay, thank you. I have a motion moved by Lyle Warden, second by Martin Lang, be resolved that staff report 47-2020 be received and that the council of the Township of South Glengarry approves bylaw 22-2020, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 02-2020, establishing an interim tax levy, be read a first, second, third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council the 16th day of April 2020. Today's the 20th.
So
Yeah,
so just
Yeah, so I
just the date.
the date's wrong, but it's okay. Yeah, so it's actually open council on this 20th day of April 2020. You heard the motion. All in favor of the motion?
we're voting in favor of this, or are we defeating it?
We're
Oh,
voting in
wait.
favor to end till the end of April from the March one, and then there'll be another one coming back in May for
Okay.
extending it till the end of June, plus the interest one will come at the same time.
Okay, so we're all going to support this, and then we'll come back with the other one.
Correct. So
Okay.
all in favor of this motion?
Is that correct?
Yeah, so this motion is moving the taxes till the end of April. And then at our next meeting in May, we'll bring back the May one, the May taxes till the end of June, and we'll bring back the interest one in regards to 2020
Thank you.
interest.
Yeah.
Okay, motion was carried. Thank you. Number 2, engineers report, Clarence Grant drain, Mr. McDonald.
Okay, thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. This drain runs parallel to County Road 19 into Cornwall, around the Red Barn property, Summerstown Road, and westward. It's a report from 1963. It was lost in 1988. It's the engineer's report. So this report has been missing longer than Councillor McDonnell has been living. So we know this drain is municipal. We do need this drain. There's a farmer who would like some work done, and I suppose this is the first step in getting a new engineer's report. Those typically range anywhere from, I mean, the Filion drain was in the $30,000 range, if I recall correctly. And if somebody has better memory, please update. This one is a much smaller drain, fewer properties on it. And we're just trying to kind of make this one right again. I've mentioned several times that former treasurer Mike Sampson said this wouldn't be an issue very much, but it seems a lot of pre-1976 drains are coming forward. That's the key date, in that pre-76 drains, the farm crossings were the property responsibility, and now they're the drain responsibility. So that would also be updated for this one as well. So this is a permission to go and get a new engineer's report for the one that we do not have.
Okay, any comments or questions from members of council? I think it's pretty straightforward. Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Yes, I'll support this, and just this doesn't cost the township any money. This is costed back to the landowners, plus there's a 1/3 grant, I believe, Lachlan, from the government. So we would take advantage of that. But we need to keep our drains up, and this is a step in the right direction.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Not hearing none. I have a motion moved by Stephanie Jaworski, seconded by Sam McDonnell. Be resolved that staff report 23-2020 be received, and that the council of the Township of South Glengarry direct administration to request an RFPs from drainage engineers firms for the production of a report on the Clarence Grant Municipal Drain under Section 78/1 of the Drainage Act, RSO 1990, Chapter D.17. You heard the motion. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. And number 3, high water bill adjustment program, Mr. McDonald.
Right, thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Our previous high water bill allowed us to write off about 75% of our sewer component. Council had wished to address this by allowing for a larger write-off and it to be conditional. This staff report touches on putting it through a committee. I know it was council's previous interest to deal with them directly through council. I think it would be streamlined and less political if we could do it administratively. You see, the committee I'd like would be the director of water, wastewater, myself, as well as the CAO. If there is a disagreement with our outcome, there would be a mechanism to go to council to see if council would offer more leeway. I feel the previous policy was followed well. It just didn't give us the latitude that council wanted to show. I think this is a reasonable way how to do it, so we can deal with it at the office if we can, and then if that's not satisfactory, bring it to the political realm. So it would be one time. We can bring it to a minimum, and it does not go retroactively to past bills. So you have that in front of you for discussion.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Warden.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I have absolutely no worries or issues with this. Sometimes pipes break or hoses get left on or something just lets go and you're not aware of it. And it doesn't take long when the tap is running. I'm full support of the amendment to this this bylaw. The only thing that I would caution is making anything retroactive. I think it needs to be from this day forward. And then, because when you start picking and choosing, I know yourself, Mr. Mayor, a year ago, you had issues with at your laundromat. So, you know, I don't think we should be picking and choosing. The past is the past, and we should move forward to the future with this.
I guess my question to that, I'll go to Mr. McDonald. Has there been issues since January 1st, 2020?
I believe we've had the most issues in a short amount of time, between 1 to 3, I believe. So those ones aren't as high as some of them, but there are people requesting some reimbursement.
So I guess my question to that is, this is probably where this bylaw is coming from, is probably more from the complaints we received this year.
Yes, and late last year was where I think it picked up steam.
And late last year, okay. I was just wondering if we should go back to January 1st of 2020 and start for this year, I guess is my question, but Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I support this 100%. I think this should be there because, as Deputy Mayor Warden said, mistakes happen. If a hose gets left on or something you're not aware of is running water, and you all of a sudden you have a $3,000 bill or $5,000 bill or whatever it may be land on your doorstep. It's not always nice, and especially in a time like this, a lot of people can't swallow that. I would like to see this retroactive just to this council. I don't know if there's appetite for that. I think there's a reason this came forward, and I think there's some people that would really benefit from this. Personally, that would be my thought, or I guess the opportunity going retroactive, but we're not going chasing these. I mean, these people would have to bring it forward to our attention. I don't know if there's any appetite around the table, but I would certainly be in favor of going at least retroactively to our term of council.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McDonald. Do you have numbers in regards to how that would affect financially if we went back to, I guess, December 2018? Or
I'm thinking there would be three accounts, maybe 4, typically $1,500, so anywhere from $4,000 to $6,000, mostly on the Lancaster system, which is our strongest in terms of reserves and revenues. So I guess if there's anything that's been fortunate, it's been on our strongest system, if there's interest in going retroactively.
okay, thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Jaworski?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. So I support this new approach. I think, you know, we manage these systems on behalf of those users, and I think those users, I think the average user would definitely appreciate having one of these, for lack of a better word, one get out of jail free card, where, you know, if there was a problem, that they're able to bring that to a committee of staff to have, and that you would have, that staff committee would have quite a bit of leeway to be able to reverse those charges. And I think it makes sense to have a staff committee, so that those could be dealt with as much as possible by staff, as opposed to necessarily having to routinely come to council for those sorts of issues. And to the issue of retroactivity, I think what Councillor McDonnell is proposing in terms of going back to our term of council, I think that makes sense, considering how this situation came to light and how long it, you know, I mean, it hasn't been that long, but it's taken us several months to come to a bylaw amendment as well. So I think it makes sense to go back to the beginning of term of council.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Lang, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Thank you, Mr. McDonald, for the presentation and the update. I'm going to agree with Councillor McDonnell and Councillor Dworsky. The reason that this is before us tonight is because of certain individuals that brought it to our attention and you know, got us working on it, and it's taken a certain amount of time to get it up and to the point where we can pass it here tonight. So I'd hate to see them, you know, not benefit a little bit from the fact that they brought this to our attention and got us working on it. And it's something that we all seem to be in agreement of. So I'm going to support that part of it, to be retroactive, at least, you know, back to our term of council. I have a question, Mr. McDonald, for you on Appendix 1, Schedule F. And this is just the form that they would have to fill out. It's on page 20. And just point number 2, I just want to know what that's referring to. It says that I agree upon the sale of the property to which this affidavit applies, that this agreement shall become null and void, and all outstanding balances at the time of the sale will be paid in full. And I'm just not sure what, does that mean that the agreement is completely null and void, or just any balances at that time? And why does it say that this agreement could have been 5 years previous?
Yes, I think that may have been a little bit legacy from our previous one. I didn't remove it just in case somebody takes some time to pay us. But if we're removing it to say a minimum balance likely to be paid, it's just in case there's arrears on the account after the agreement. But given that this agreement can bring us to minimum, and most of the time people who are asking for this leniency do pay their water, it doesn't necessarily have to be there. So I could probably remove that line. It's kind of just excess. You know, it's a little bit redundant given.
Just for clarification, and that would it not work the same as property taxes, as if your property is sold and it automatically gets paid before anything else gets paid?
Yeah, water is a part of the tax certificate.
So the water would be automatically paid if the property is sold anyway.
Yeah.
So we don't really need to have it in there, I guess.
It just seemed odd that we're saying that this agreement, which could have been at that point, could have been years in the past, would become null and void. I just wasn't sure where we were going with that.
Yeah.
Right, but I think it's, if I may, Mr. Mayor, that line is in there. Basically, it would protect the next owner. So basically, if this agreement, say property A, those owners have a water overage, and we enter into this agreement, and for whatever reason, and then the next owner comes on 3 years down the road, technically they should be able to have their own agreement. So this agreement would become null and void. And if there's any balance owing, I think it makes sense in there in regards to legal terms, and I think it should stay. My thoughts.
That might explain it. I just wasn't sure where we were coming from with it and why we had that sentence in there.
Yeah, because is this going to the for the duration of the ownership of the property, or is it one kick at the can for the property, or is it one kick at the can for the owner? Like, how does council want to do that?
I would suggest it's going to be by owner.
I agree with that, but so then that would definitely make sense to leave that.
Yeah, Councillor Jaworski and then Councillor McDonnell.
Sorry, no, I was good. I was nodding my head in agreement that it would be for one.
Okay, I thought I seen your hand go up once.
No, apologies.
Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, that was one of my questions as well. It's so long as this, it would be my preference to see this tied to as opposed to maybe the account number, the the bill, whoever it's being billed to, like upon a sale, that property doesn't lose their one-time get out of jail free card. It does go on to the next owner.
Yeah, okay, I think that's pretty clear. Mr. McDonald, the question I have, the motion on the table, it just basically passes this program, but are you going to change things in there in regards to going back to December 2nd or whatever it was, 2018, or how do you want to deal with that?
I think I could deal with that administratively. I understand when your council's term started. And if I may just elaborate on that point number 2 and kind of where it started, it would be our former policy would only allow us to write 75% of the sewer off, and we'd offer to give 6-month leniency to an owner to interest-free grace time. So that would clear the account. So in the event of that being there, I think in addition to the legality that Deputy Mayor Warden brought up, it might be wise also, as much as it's somewhat redundant in the case where we don't write off all of the water and we say we'll give you an interest-free grace period, that if that house is sold in the interim, it's dealt with in the interim. So it is a little bit of a double protection, but I think it can remain there. It's kind of like an appendix, perhaps.
Okay, if you write something up, can you just bring it back to one of our council meetings in the near future, just so we can have a look at it to make sure we're okay with it?
In terms of which water will be written off?
Yes.
Well,
yeah, it should come back in a staff report.
Not so much which ones will be written off, it's how that policy is going to be written. You know, in regards to going back to December, and is it going to be left to the individual to come and contact us, or are we going to go out and contact those 3 or 4 people?
Okay.
Or just a matter of how your policy is going to be written.
Okay, great. I can do that.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Warden, was that your comment, or did you have another?
Yeah, I was just going to say it should come back in a staff report, because I would be curious to know what the impact on the budget is going to be. And I am not in favor of going retroactively, but I am definitely in favor of the policy as it's written this evening. So I would like to see the numbers, please.
Okay, so Lachlan, I think the majority of council is looking for something in regards to going back to when this council started. So if you can write that up and just kind of give us some ideas on how that's going to affect the dollar amounts.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion moved by Martin Lang, second by Stephanie Jaworski. Be resolved that staff report 49-2020 be received and that the council of the Township of South Glengarry rescind the 2009 Schedule F to bylaw 39-09, and that is to be replaced by the new 2020 Schedule F for bylaw 39-09. You heard the motion. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you. We'll move to number 4, modernization funding reallocation for the budget 2020. Mr. Mills.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to talk to council tonight about modernization funding and reallocation of the budget, as you mentioned. When you heard the beginning of the meeting tonight, Mr. McDonald presented about tax deferral. There was a lot of comments from you on council about what the present situation with COVID-19 is going to cost. At our last meeting, there was also discussion amongst council about looking at efficiencies. So this is the first of a few reports tonight that I think addresses not only the efficiencies, but things have changed considerably in the last 6 weeks, which has required us to look at perhaps doing some things differently. So I'll speak to the modernization report. Council will remember that we received a hefty amount last year, allocation of over $600,000 from the Ontario government. The money was allocated to in reserves for 70,000, 200,000, and over 300,000 in planning, fire, and in the general reserve. Then it was allocated in the budget process. We had 2 meetings, one in the fall, and we finished up just after Christmas. $70,000 initially to the recreation master plan, $200,000 for fire communications upgrade, the radios. Recreation expansion review, that would be the Charland Recreation Center. And then the balance, just over $250,000 to reserves. Given the realities of what we're in right now, especially in recreation, you'll see a few changes that we're recommending to defer the recreation master plan until 2021. Remove the fire communications upgrade and fund that from reserves, and defer the recreation expansion review until 2021 as well. So 150,000 would go to 2021, namely for the recreation master plan and recreation expansion review. Then administration's recommending $40,000 for the route optimization review, which directly relates to the location of the roads garage. That's one thing that it relates to, but it also relates to perhaps doing it more efficiently. Do we need one roads garage? Can we do our plow routes differently? That might impact the machinery we need, and so on. Okay, so that's the 40,000. We've had to adjust things with our maintenance staff, where as of now we can't run recreation and facilities and parks. So our recreation staff is doing a lot of work on the inside, namely just finishing up in Martintown Recreation Center, a lot of things at the arena, and also right now at the Green Valley Recreation Center. Along with that, in talking to Mr. Lattiser, we're looking at some accessibility things that can be done, which Mr. Lattiser can speak to if you'd like. Initially, we're asking that you agree to the allocation of $50,000 towards accessibility. That work can be done now by staff. And not only is it meaningful work, it's something we have to do, but it keeps them busy. We would come back with a plan on that. It's getting permission that we can allocate the money. Then we'll come back with a specific staff report on accessibility. A big one here, the next one for 75,000, is the modern technology projects. And this is an example here of one, doing a council meeting remotely. But in talking to staff, we look at the council chambers that requires upgrades in terms of sound and technology, that this may be more of an exercise in moving money from not using reserves per se, but using actual or budget money, sorry, but we're using actual money that's in reserves and modernization. So it's a shift of funds, but it also does help our overall, I think, tax funds that we're getting from taxation. We would ask that you support then the rest going into 287,000 into general reserve, and I'll entertain any questions that you may have. I know that Mr. McDonald did a considerable amount of work on this in the fall with staff, and I asked him to take a look at this in consideration with staff, that we're going to do things differently, but recognizing that the recreation master plan and the recreation expansion review are deferred rather than canceled. So I'll take any questions now. Related to anything specific to the route optimization study and or other direct budget items, I would refer to Mr. McDonald and Mr. McDonald. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Ward.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you for this report. It's fairly detailed, Tim. I was initially concerned of deferring the master plan, but after we had our conversation, it totally made sense deferring. The only issue that I have is I don't want the balance of this fund to go into general reserves. I think it needs to be kept in a separate file for modernization, and I think we need to utilize it for specifically that. To use this money, it's a gift horse. It won't affect the budget. Anything that we can use for making the municipality more efficient, I'd like to see that 287,000 stay in its own fund labeled modernization, and tap it till it's gone. That's my only concerns or comments.
Thank you. Mr. McDonald, do you want to jump on that, or?
Yes, I can easily make a separate GL line for modernization funding. The intent always with modernization funding, despite being in general reserves, is to spend it on projects. It's not to get lost there. I know I'm known as somewhat of a holder of reserves, but that one's certainly for for efficiency and cost savings. And I'm all for spending it when and immediately as soon as the projects are ready to go. So, but I can put it in a separate reserve.
Thank you. Other members of council agree with that? Just to nod your heads if you would, please. So, okay, so we'll move it to a separate reserve. Mr. Mills, you're okay with that? Thank you. Any other questions from members of council? Councillor Jaworski?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for the report, and thank you very much for being nimble in moving, looking at what we can and can't do right now and what makes sense. And I think it makes a lot of sense to be working on those ability projects while the buildings are empty right now. One thing I thought that the money actually had been put back to reserves. That's what was my understanding during budget. But if this is formally recognizing it, I'm glad that is the case. Obviously, I'm a big supporter of the route optimization project. I think that's very, very important with the how to be efficient and whether or not we should be operating out of 2 locations or 1, and making sure that if we go to 1, that it's properly sized for the equipment. Mike, a little bit of a concern about the 75,000 that's going for modern technology. I find that a very vague description. So I would like that maybe if it could be tightened up a bit. And if it is specifically to address things that we put aside in the budget for with regards to the building, I would like to make sure that that's reflected, that now that it's coming out of reserves versus, I want to make sure that that's all tabulated so that by the end of this year we have a clearer picture of what the situation has cost us and what it hasn't. So yeah, so at a minimum, the 75,000 to be more clearly detailed on how it's being spent.
So thanks for the question. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The 40,000 is the only amount that's delegated directly with the amount for the route optimization. We will come back with anything further that's spent related to accessibility or on the technology with a staff report for your approval. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments from members of council? Not hearing none. Thanks very much, Mr. Mills, for your report. I have a motion moved by Lyle Warden, second by Sam McDonnell. Be resolved that staff report 50-2020 be received and that the council of the Township of South Glengarry approve, number 1, returning $200,000 from the fire reserves to general reserves. 2, the deferment of the recreation master plan and recreation expansion plan until 2021. And 3, the transfer of $165,000 for projects outlined in the staff report, route optimization, accessibility plan projects, and modern technology projects. You heard the motion. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you. I will ask the Deputy Mayor to take the next one. Mr. Warden, you have the motion in front of you somewhere?
I am on it. Staff report, Glen Walter waterfront property.
Yes,
I don't have, yeah, so I read the motion at the bottom.
At the end, yep.
Yeah, okay, we're just about there. Be resolved that the council of the Township of South Glengarry pursuant to bylaw 11-18 for the purchase and sale of land, hereby declared land legally described as concession 1, BF Indian Lands, part lots 8, 9 include RP 14R 3229, part 1, as surplus to the township needs, save and accept portion council wishes to retain for public use. Mr. McDonald.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. The council has met with the residents and dealing with a property that the municipality owns in the Glen Walter area. We have discussed options with adjacent property owners, and council had directed that we look at declaring these lands as surplus if there was an interest from the adjacent property owners in the purchase of said lands. And letters were sent out to 8 property owners. We have responses from 6 that were in favor and supportive, excuse me, of purchasing those lands. So the next step pursuant to to our bylaw 1118 would be for council to formally declare the lands as surplus. We would then have a survey completed to create the parcels that would then be sold to the adjacent property owners, save and except for a parcel of those lands that the council wishes to maintain for public use. So this is just the next step in this process, and it would allow us to proceed with the survey work, and the residents completely understand that they would need to be invoiced for the cost of survey and legal costs as part of this whole negotiation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McDonald. Are there any questions of council? I have a question, Johan. In regards to the surveys, the lands will be transferred once the money for the properties is received. Like if some of them, I know, or is that the intent?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, the process would involve the creation of a draft survey plan. That draft survey plan would first and foremost be brought to council for their review before we directed the surveyors to deposit that plan and register it legally with the registry office of the province of Ontario. Then we would bring in a lawyer to draw up the sales of the properties. There would be some negotiations in there. There's provisions on how those negotiations would take place once the survey has been completed, and that again would be at the direction of council. There are options as to how we go about finding an agent or a lawyer to assist us with these sales.
I just have another question. I guess, so before the, I'm just curious to know, should we not have that settled before we do the preliminary work? Should there not be an agreed upon? I understand this is just the formal process to declare it surplus, but before there's any survey work done, should we not know what's going to come of the land, how much we're getting for it and whatnot? I understand that's like it's to be discussed in private because but should we not know what we're getting for those lands?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, at the time, the discussions with the property owners, they were provided with an estimated value of the lands at one of the meetings.
Okay.
And in the letter we sent them, we asked them to acknowledge that they would be interested in purchasing those lands at the prices or somewhere near those prices, and also to acknowledge that they would be responsible for survey and legal costs. So we do have an acknowledgement from the residents. As you'll see in the staff report, administration would recommend, and I think this speaks to your point, Mr. Deputy Mayor, is that we would probably want to pursue having a more formal legal agreement drafted up with those property owners at this point.
Okay, perfect. Is there any other questions of members of council? Seeing none, you all heard the motion as read. Do you want me to read it again, or can we vote on it? That's Frank's trick. Okay, all those in favor as the motion presented? 2, okay. Carried. Back to you, Frank.
Yeah, you did. Okay, thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Number 6 is the pickup truck that was removed. So the next one is a letter of support to Bell to increase high-speed internet access. Broadband fund, Mrs. Haley.
Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council, and members of the public. I have before you this evening a request for a letter of support from Bell to increase high-speed internet. You may recall that an announcement was made to create a broadband fund that will provide $750 million over 5 years to support projects throughout Canada to expand high-speed internet. We have had requests from other organizations in the past come before us saying they were looking to expand this service in our community. And we recently approved one for Cogeco as well as for the Eastern Ontario Regional Network. So before you this evening is one from Bell, and they're simply looking for councils to support so that when they file their application with CRTC, excuse me, it will include the Township of South Glengarry's support letter indicating they'd like to expand their services in our municipality.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. McDonald. Councillor McDonnell.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Ms. Haley, for this report. I can say I'm in full support of this letter. I think we definitely need to expand our broadband capabilities here and our internet in general and cell phone service in general. It's hard to do business, especially it's been made very evident, I guess, with COVID-19. I'm actually sitting here in the township office in one of the offices, kind of social distancing away from the rest of everyone else because my internet at home isn't sustainable enough for me to hold the meeting. So I'm in full support of this and I have no issue. I think it'd be great.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Warden. No.
This,
Start over, Mr. Warden, please.
oh, I
You're
was
on.
muted. Yeah, sorry about that. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Joanne, this 750 million over 5 years, that's just Bell's investment, correct? Or is that part of the EORN, the 3 level of government fund, or is it 2 separate funds?
That is CRTC's investment for 750 million, or the Canadian government's investment for 750 million over the next 5 years.
Okay, so is it, would some of that money be allocated to EORN, or is that a separate thing altogether?
So it's my understanding that EORN would also be providing or applying, excuse me, to access that fund.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other, Councillor Jaworski?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Haley, for the report. I also, I mean, to echo what Councillor McDonnell said earlier, in terms of the need for high-speed internet, I think if there was an issue, like the top issue that was brought to me when running for council was the need to expand high-speed internet in our tip and just how certain areas really are critically underserved. And this is definitely like an issue that residents keep coming to me, you know, asking for how can we do, when is it coming, what can we do to improve? And I think, you know, this is, you know, sort of the standard letter that to ensure that South Glengarry is included in any future potential products, you know, to access this big broadband fund. And again, this is not a letter that's you know, going to give Bell a chance to fast track necessarily projects or to go avoid planning processes or other processes that we have in place. But this is to ensure that, you know, South Glengarry is equally, you know, part of the you know, those who are being looked to potentially have increased service. I think this is definitely what the residents have been asking for.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McDonnell.
I'd just like to agree with Councillor Jaworski. I know that was the largest, the majority of people I spoke to as I was running for council and continue as a councillor is we need better internet, better cell coverage. I mean, I think there's a lot of good spots and we've done a lot of good over the years and past councils, but we need to continue that work. And we have to acknowledge that just because we signed this letter doesn't mean tomorrow the Bell's going to come paving through with fiber, which too bad they wouldn't, but it's not, it's just, we're just expressing, it's a letter of support. We're just showing our interest in having more sustainable internet in the area, and which would ultimately help business and kids in school.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Deputy Mayor Warden could probably back me up, but a number of years ago, we were asked where schools and parks and so on were in the municipality. But now the first question is how is your internet in certain areas of where you're selling property? So, and again, you're right. It's certainly throughout the elections, that's probably one of the biggest questions that we get. So we need to hopefully move forward and as quickly as possible get this fiber into South Glengarry. So I have a motion moved by Lyle Warden, second by Martin Lang. Be it resolved that staff report 53-2020 be received and that the council of the Township of South Glengarry directs the mayor to execute a letter to Bell to support the submission to CRTC RFP for the broadband fund in hopes to improve broadband access in South Glengarry. You heard the motion. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Haley. Okay, and natural gas expansion submission to Enbridge Gas Incorporated, Mrs. Haley.
Okay, thank you again. So the purpose of the staff report before you is to update council and the public on our recent submission to Enbridge. In December 2019, the Ministry of Energy, Northern Development and Mines announced that the provincial government will make available $130 million to support new natural gas projects throughout the province, as long as construction would commence between 2021 and 2023. And the Ontario Energy Board requested submissions for organizations to report back to them by August 31st of this year for potential projects. Many of our council members over the years have been lobbying for natural gas expansion in our community. Just like high-speed internet, it's a very important resource that many of our residents would like to have. So we were given an opportunity to make a formal submission, which is great because those opportunities don't always come up. We were given that opportunity with very short timelines. So before you this evening is a full explanation as well as copies of what was submitted to Enbridge, so council is properly informed. So we were fortunate to involve our township's connectivity committee by teleconference due to the restrictions of COVID-19. And our committee was very valuable to us in giving us advice and feedback as to where they think the priority project areas should be. You'll see in the staff report, there were many areas listed throughout the township, but after working with Enbridge and the Ministry of Energy's office, we were made aware that we could submit more than one location, no guarantee of approval for either, but it was narrowed down then to have project area number 1 being Banesville Curry Hill, primarily east of Lancaster on the South Service Road, and project area number 2 being the Cornwall Regional Airport. So attached to your staff report, Mayor and Council, is a copy of the letter that was submitted to Enbridge, a copy of the maps, the required information, including the number of households, potential development for commercial and residential, as well as heating sources. And we're very hopeful and excited that our projects would be considered seriously by Enbridge so that we can be awarded natural gas expansion. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you for your report. Councillor McDonnell, then Deputy Mayor Warden.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to thank Ms. Haley for all the work she did on this. I know being myself and Councillor Jaworski are on the connectivity committee and the great members on the committee. We had a very good meeting. There were some very good ideas thrown around. Given our time constraints, it was very tough determining which would be our top priorities. We were very careful to stick to the recommendation of the province, and the actual intention of this program is to bring forward projects that wouldn't otherwise get done because of lack of business case. So I think Banesville and the airport are excellent projects that will fit that. And it'll also bring a good opportunity for the airport should it be chosen, and as well as Banesville with the subdivisions along the way. I know myself, we were tight on time. I know myself ran around and counted propane tanks for Miss Haley, but there was a lot of work put into this, and I'd just like to highlight all the work Miss Haley and Megan had put in as well.
Could I comment to that, Mr. Mayor?
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, so I appreciate that, thanks. But we do need to thank Megan Bingley as well, and yourself, Sam, for actually physically doing some work and driving around on a weekend on his own time. That was very helpful. And we had very good responses and participation from the committee, which we appreciated. Really timely email responses, lots of good input. So that just makes our job a little bit easier when we have that support. So thank you.
Hey, thank you, Deputy Mayor Warden.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I want to concur with what Councillor McDonnell said. I know the tight timelines and dealing with COVID and everything else. I know there was a strong effort between staff and this committee, and there's some huge possibilities of changing. How do I say that? This is a great opportunity. If we're able to get that Banesville project, I think it's going to change a lot of, it's going to be very positive for a lot of our residents. And fingers crossed that gets chosen. While the airport, it would be nice, I would really like to see them choose the Baynesville area because it's going to have the most impact on our local economy, in my opinion. So well done, staff and council members and the connectivity committee as a whole.
Great, thank you. Joanne, the only question I have is, I guess, I've been hearing it a couple of times today, but the Glendale subdivision, was that because it's on top of their list now? Is that why we didn't request that one, or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is exactly the reason. There was certainly a lot of discussion and deliberation on that. And to be selfish from an administrative perspective, the Glendale area would have been an easy area to simply submit. But in working with Councillor McDonnell, who had a lot of discussions with members of provincial parliament prior to this announcement, as well as his discussions with Enbridge, and I believe yourself and Deputy Mayor as well, we always have heard from Enbridge that the Glendale area is kind of a natural next progression for them. So our committee decided that it would be better if we were to choose 2 other areas and prove to them what the business case is, in hopes that Glendale will proceed someday anyway.
Okay. Okay, no, I appreciate that. I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't going to interfere or affect the expansion of the Glendale subdivision. I don't think it will, personally. I think this is some other type of work, I guess, with Baynesville and the airport. Being that the Glendale subdivision was on the top of the list anyhow. So I think you're right. That is their next project, and the other ones would, could be a couple of years away after that. But I think the Glendale would be their next one for sure. So congratulations to the committee. Thanks very much for all the work you've done. I'll go back to Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I guess just to comment on the Glendale subdivision, it was bounced around quite a bit at the committee level, and after looking it over and through talks with Enbridge as well, we were made aware that there is a business case there. It simply, in short term, from Enbridge, it's been forgotten and kind of was missed on their list, and it should be done on its own merit. They said, should we I guess apply for it, it would get the funding, but it could jeopardize us getting funding in, say, Baynesville, where otherwise without that funding we would never get there, really. So that was the goal of that, was to keep true to the actual program. But no, it has been made a priority of the committee to really push and really I guess in short terms harass Enbridge to get the Glendale connected to natural gas.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Glad to hear that. Councillor Jaworski.
Good. Thank you, through Mr. Mayor, just to reiterate what Councillor McDonnell has said, is that the way this current submission is positioned is that this is for funding for projects that on their own merits would not be able to go through, where Enbridge and the other companies like that would never see a business case to do it, and those areas always remain without natural gas. So the idea with here is to put through projects where we know there's great demand and we know that there is, it would have great benefits, but that they need that extra bit of federal funding from upper levels of government, to be able to move them forward. Whereas the Glendale project, that's a project that has a very solid business case without having additional, upper tier monies as, put towards it. So definitely it was something discussed, but it was a deliberate, choice to ones that we knew that would not move forward without additional funding.
Great, thank you. Back in February, we had the opportunity of meeting with Minister Walker, and he's quite familiar in regards to our area and the concerns in respect to bringing gas to our area. So hopefully he remembers that when those reports go through. Okay, I have a motion moved by Sam McDonnell, second by Stephanie Jaworski. Be resolved that staff report 54-2020 be received and that the council of the Township of South Glengarry receives and files this staff report. You heard the motion. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Haley and Mr. McDonnell and Megan. I'm not sure if there's other ones on that committee. Okay, number 11-2020 clean yard bylaw, third reading. Ms. Brunet.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council and public. I'm about to share with you my PowerPoint. And Is everyone able to see it? Perfect. Okay, so today we're going to be doing the third reading for the proposed clean yards bylaw. Following the second reading, we went, staff and myself, to review what could have been changed. And here are some of the key points. For the outside of settlement areas, so outside of urban and rural settlement areas, we have changed some of the wording to alleviate other properties compared to like other size properties compared to smaller properties and larger properties. So for example, a complaint comes in regarding this property, which is 5.4 hectares. It is outside of any settlement area. It is developed, however, larger than 2.5. Therefore, there would not be any enforcement. They do not, there's no regulations. If a complaint were to come in about their grass, they do not have to maintain it. It would be unreasonable to require them to maintain their property. Following is this property, which is outside of a settlement area as well. It is less than 2.5 acres. So a complaint comes in, I begin looking into the property, find out it's outside of a settlement area. It's developed, but less than 2.5 hectares. Therefore, we can have some enforcement regarding it. It would exclude the forested area. Therefore, they wouldn't be required to cut, all their trees and all around that. It would just be the maintained area section around the house. We have this property, which is outside of a settlement area. Complaint comes in, investigation begins. It's vacant land. It's less than 1 acre. Therefore, they do have to maintain a 1.5 meter buffer strip. And this is only for vacant properties that are less than 1 acre. Regarding the subject property complaint in their garbage, and that was brought up by the boulevard question. So a complaint comes in, we find that the garbage is derived from the subject property. I couldn't find a picture with house on it, so enjoy my house there. I know the garbage is coming from that property. They do have to clean it up. Regarding the length of time that garbage remains on a property, a complaint comes in, they're able to prove that it's been there for more than 1 month, therefore accumulated more than 14 days, we can enforce and require them to clean up the garbage. Regarding construction receptacles, there was a question about what if I have the storage bin on my, not storage, but a container on my property because I'm doing construction. Staff has looked into the situation and determined that when a permit is required to do construction, it means that it's a little more, it's a longer period of time typically that it takes to do that construction. Therefore, the duration of that bin is limited to the duration of construction. Whereas if it's something that does not require a permit, it's for a maximum of 3 months. Now that can also be reviewed depending on what type of construction it is, such as, a flooded basement and all the drywall has to be taken off. It took more than 3 months. Not a problem. We're going to work with that property owner in order to make sure that they can get rid of it properly, dispose of it properly. And that would be the most valid changes that we had to the bylaw from the last time we read it. I believe now that it very much addresses what council members were seeking regarding urban and rural settlement areas and outside of those areas. It still has some power for some properties that are out of control, but that are smaller than 2.5 hectares and others that aren't maintained that are less than 1 acre on vacant lands. The enforcement model always remains the same. Conversation and education is priority, and we move on from there. And that is it. Are there any questions for my Clean Yards bylaw?
Okay, thank you very much for your report. I don't see council members at all. Okay, perfect, thank you. Councillor Jaworski, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Brunet, for your staff report and the presentation. I can tell that you put a lot of effort in putting these together. So thank you for that. A quick question on one of the images that you showed, the property that was primarily forested. If just in that case, like when we look at complaints being valid or not valid, if someone were to complain about that, where you can't, I would think you can't even see the house from the road. if someone were to complain about that their grass is not cut, is that really, unless this was like a landowner or a tenant issue, where perhaps the property owner is not cutting the grass for the tenant as per an agreement, would that really be the type of complaint that you would be looking at if it was, like basically a property that people cannot see from the road?
So if it's a property that, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, if it's a property that they can't see from the road, typically a complaint wouldn't come in for it. So this would be exactly as you said, a landlord-tenant situation, or someone went to visit a friend and they notice, wow, I really can't get to the door because the grass is completely everywhere, or there's noxious weeds, which is a separate section, but still would involve unmaintained grass. It would be able to address those situations.
Okay, but for example, a nuisance complaint by someone who really who's not at all impacted by this situation, that wouldn't be a complaint that we would entertain.
So during the investigation, we would determine if it were valid or not. If it's a vindictive complaint or something of that sort, then it would be looked at differently, yes. Or considered invalid.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions from members of council? Oh, Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Veronica, thank you very much for addressing a lot of the concerns that I and the other councillors had. I think you've done a good job of that. I didn't see anything that jumped out at me that looked like it would be a big issue. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Councillor Lang.
Okay, thank you. If I'm not hearing none, I have a motion moved by Martin Lang, second by Stephanie Jaworski. Be resolved that staff report number 55-2020 be received, and that bylaw 11-2020, being a bylaw to provide for the maintenance of land in a clean, clear, and safe condition in the township of South Glengarry, be read a third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council this 20th day of April 2020, and furthermore, that bylaw 28-03 as amended be rescinded. You heard the motion. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Bruna. And number 1013-2020 fence bylaw, third reading, Ms. Bruna.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council and public again. I will take a moment to share my screen for the PowerPoint. I believe everyone should be seeing it right now.
Yep.
Perfect. So this is the third reading for the proposed fence bylaw. Once again, concerns and items that were brought forward during the second reading have been reviewed and altered as needed. One of them was regarding snow fencing permitted within the township for crowd control. We have added that into the limitations of the use of it. So therefore they are allowed to use for a limited amount of time snow fencing for crowd control. We have the changes in section 3 of the bylaw, which used to address fences in residential, rural, and agricultural zones. The new alteration now addresses fences in residential and rural zones for the purposes of residential use. Therefore, section 3 no longer has enforcement for rural or agricultural properties. Rural with a residential use means specifically, half my screen is cut off. Sorry, I'm just going to look at it in here. Means a property lawfully used for primary or seasonal human habitation that contains a dwelling, including a single detached, a semi-detached, or multi-residential, as approved by the township's comprehensive zoning bylaw, but does not include an agricultural use. Therefore, when throughout the bylaw where it refers to residential, rural with the residential use, it strictly has to have a type of human habitation on the property. It can't just be agricultural land. Or agricultural land with a house. It does not apply to those properties. Therefore, this new proposed fence bylaw would be able to address the permitted uses. It would be able to address the types of fences in residential and rural with the residential use properties, as well as limitations of the type of construction used for those fences. The enforcement model remains the same. We always start with conversation and education. and move forward as needed. Any questions from council?
Okay, thank you for your presentation. I'll open it up to any questions or comments. Not seeing none. I think the changes you made is what council was looking for, so thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council.
I have a motion moved by Sam McDonnell, second by Martin Lang. Be resolved that staff report number 56-2020 be received, and that bylaw 13-2020 being a bylaw to regulate fences in the township of South Glengarry be read a third time, passed, signed, and sealed at open council this 20th day of April 2020. And furthermore, that bylaw 28-03 as amended be rescinded. You heard the motion. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Burnett.
Thank you, everyone.
Number 11 is the grass cutting and roadside cutting proposal. I believe we'll go to Mr. Mills, then Mr. Ladisser, and maybe Mr. McDonald. You're on mute, Mr. Mills. She's going to take you off.
I'm often muted by the clerk.
We all are.
Yeah. I heard the laugh in the background too. So I'm going to start off with the grass cutting and roadside cutting proposal. I have asked, we've spent a few weeks as the management team, individual managers looking at budget efficiencies. This is one that came up initially as an opportunity for savings, not only some savings now by doing grass cutting and roadside cutting internally, but also once we purchase some additional machinery and have had the opportunity to do it once, that we could become more efficient and perhaps save even more. So the background is the past 5 years, the townships tendered parks and facility grass cutting and hired a contractor on an hourly rate for roadside mowing. You'll see with the figures there that the percentage increase year over year is considerable. And in fact, in the last few years, over 20%. So I had a conversation with Mr. McDonald, Mr. Ladisser to go back and look at the possibilities of doing this internally. The other thing is the timing is right for this, not only in terms of efficiencies, but again, we aren't able to do the same things within the roads department right now, and perhaps for the short-term foreseeable future, and also in terms of the recreation department. So the timing is right for it. Again, we've been asked by you at the last few council meetings to look at efficiencies. And this is another one we're bringing forward tonight. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Ladisser for some analysis and to finish by talking about dollar amounts, which I'm sure you'll have questions of us, which I'll turn that over to Mr. Ladisser and Mr. McDonald, who's had responsibilities in the past as well. So Mr. Ladisser.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I think that what we tried to do here was come up with 3 different types of reports. One, just the staff report. The other one being Chart A and Chart B. Chart B simply defines the amount of time that we're guesstimating that each of those areas would be. I think after a week or 2, maybe 3, we could probably get that time down even less. I think, there'll be some steep learning curve at the beginning, and then eventually we can be even more proficient in terms of the amount of time. What we tried to do was give everyone an idea as to what the potential costs would be. I think when you look at what we are proposing, there's some benefits in terms of having people locally being employed and deploying some of our current staff in a very positive way and more efficient way, perhaps, and with really minimal cost in terms of what our inventory would need. Having said that, we already have some inventory, so it is not a stretch to be able to use our current inventory and with additional purchases. What Mr. Mills was referring to was in the past 3 years, since 2017, there's been about a 21 to 24% increase. What I tried to do is, we tried to do was look at it from a point of view is even a minimal 10% increase from 2019. And we all know that costs are going to go up. They're not coming down, they're going up. There was still a significant savings. If we currently kept the 2019 prices, according to the numbers I have here, we would be still saving approximately $48,000. In 2020, say just minimal increase, we could be saving as much as $60,000. I think that a couple of things that are really, really important here to note is it distresses me when I hear residents through Lachlan McDonald that when the grass is quite long, we actually have residents going out there and cutting the grass because from a contractor point of view, they're on a schedule, which I understand. But I think there's something to be said about us taking that responsibility and providing the service that is needed here. Furthermore, when you look at the rainy season, when if there's 2 days out of the week where there's rain, we can always deploy our staff to other areas. And I think that's a very important point. As you all have my list, there's a litany of things that we're trying to accomplish. So the nice thing about that is that we can do that. The other thing is it's about servicing, and I think that a number of you have suggested, servicing our residents, and I think that this is a great opportunity for us to do that. And we're talking about efficiencies. I know Councillor Jaworski has spoken many times about efficiencies, and we happen to agree. There are ways that we could perhaps provide efficiencies through perhaps doing something like what we're proposing. Last point I wanted to make was you'll see that once we purchase some of those items, there is even more of a savings. Even with a marginal 10% increase, you're looking close to $91,000, which to me is substantial. Very last point I wanted to mention is that there's going to be some trial and error in the first year, but I think it'll be a good learning opportunity for all of the staff and myself and Mr. McDonald as well. And I think it would be great to have that opportunity to allow us to have that opportunity to service the community. Enough said.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McDonald, did you have any comments you wanted to add to that? Or?
Yeah, there's not too much to add. Mr. Ladisser has covered pretty much everything. And we have in the past had the parks and facilities cutting separate from the roadside cutting, but at Mr. Ladisser's initiative and Mr. Mills' initiative, we looked at the whole package of vegetation control. And when you look at roadsides, and yes, the costs have escalated over the past years. And I think council, especially council members that were here in previous councils, can recall that we did have certain contractors working for us on roadside mowing in the past. However, we were not overly satisfied with the end product that we were getting. So I think we've improved upon that. So not only have the costs escalated, but the effort has escalated. and that has manifested itself in higher costs. We're doing more on the roadsides to control our vegetation because we know we're dealing with noxious weeds. We know we're dealing with brush that's creeping in on our road allowances, and we know that maintaining our road allowances will continue to assist us with improving drainage and making sure our ditches are operating. So there's a lot of wonderful value that we get out of maintaining our roadside. So we looked at this as a comprehensive program of all the vegetation control in the municipality. And as Mr. Lattiser has said, if we are performing the work in-house with some investments in equipment, we can look at becoming more efficient, but even maybe more importantly, doing the job better and making sure that we're providing a very high level of service to our residents in both the parks and our facilities and on our roadsides.
Okay, thanks very much. I'm going to open the questions to members of the council. The first one would be Councillor McDonnell, then Deputy Mayor Warden, then Councillor Lang.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you, Mr. Lattiser, for the report. I will just say from the get-go, since your position has been created, this has been top of mind for me. I think we absolutely could be doing our own grass. We do have the manpower to do it, and I think you look at neighboring municipalities that are doing it as well. And as you said, we can give a little more attention to detail as opposed to just sticking to a schedule. If there's a pitch that needs to be done for a weekly soccer game, I mean, we can focus on when games are scheduled as opposed to when we fall on the regular schedule and when the trucks are passing by to cut the grass. I think what I would like to, I guess I have two questions on top of this. Would the Cub Cadet mower that you do mention or refer to in the report that we already have in inventory, could you give a little more of a, I guess, a description of it? Is it just your typical riding mower, or is it a zero turn? Because I had some concerns that way. Oh, Mr. Lattiser is muted.
How's that?
Perfect.
No, it is a, it is, let me just get to my notes here. It is a zero turn riding mower, and it's in an excellent shape.
Perfect. No, excellent. I know they do make a Cub Cadet does have a riding mower with a steering wheel, but it is zero turn. So that was just a question. I think just for those guys that are going to be running it. The other, I guess it's not so much a question, but more of a request that we really do keep track of. I'd like to see a formal report at the end of how much we really do save. And I want to see a good comprehensive report, I guess, as far as even like fuel, instead of just, if I know we're going to be running gas motors on these lawnmowers, judging by the prices. So it won't be the employees are just filling them up at one of the tanks we have at the garage, but it would just be to maybe attractive receipts or just a spreadsheet at the end to show, where our costs were. And I know it's hard to gauge those things, especially as how those machines are going to run. I know we carry a lot of grass at home that we cut that it does get costly, but it would just be nice to see a comprehensive breakdown at the end.
Well, if I may, Mr. Mayor, through you, absolutely. I think that the only way this is actually going to work is if we do keep those records, and at the end of the season, we're going to be able to show that there were significant savings, and I'm hoping there might even be more savings than this. And one of the things that Mr. Mills and I have spoken about is also the supervision of the people doing the work. And I know Mr. McDonald as well, we've spoken about the fact that where you have contractors and you're sort of at their mercy in a way, that all three of us are going to be taking a very active role in making sure that people are doing what they're supposed to be doing in a timely manner, and that the quality of work is satisfactory. One of the things that people will know about me is that I have no problem with going and investigating work that's been done. I could tell you a couple of stories, but I won't bore you with them all. But trust me when I say I'll be in behind looking, and it's not because we distrust what our workers are doing. I think they need to be accountable, and I think that Mr. Mills and Mr. McDonald and I have talked about that if we're taking this on, we must ensure that they are accountable and they're doing good work.
Yeah, I agree. That's great to hear. Sorry, Mr. Councilor McDonald.
Oh, no. Through you, Mr. Mayor, just one last question. Just one last question was, I guess for Mr. McDonald, are we going to be putting a tender out for that? I understand there's quite a few companies in the area that do provide snow tractors. We are getting a little later in the year to be leasing one, but I'm sure there are a few still available. And I guess more or less what specs we would be looking at as far as be sure we're looking, should we need a front PTO or a back PTO or hydraulic capacity and things such as that?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. The question on the tractor that would be needed to enhance the roadside mowing or to be the additional unit on roadside mowing. At the current time, Mr. Lattister's spreadsheet shows that we would be looking at a lease to purchase options for that tractor. We also could be looking at just short-term lease for the 5 months, but at this point, we're looking at a couple of different options for that. But we wouldn't be looking at a tender. It would be looking at a lease to purchase or a short-term lease for the summer months when we need the unit.
I guess through being said, I'll just comment saying that I know for the cost, what it costs to maintain the tractors, and if we're only going to be using it in the summertime, we'll have limited use in the wintertime as we already have 2 tractors. I would be more apt to be looking at a snow company that leases them through the summer. I know we do it at on the farm at home where we only need the tractor in the summertime to make hay, and it's a very cost-effective way to have a piece of equipment and not worry about too much about maintenance and exterior costs. And also we have the option in the future, should we need one in the wintertime and feel it's a good fit, we can look at it at that point. But I would suggest starting off on a snow tractor lease.
Okay, thank you. I'll move to Deputy Mayor Warden.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess Councillor McDonnell said most of what I wanted to say. I'm cautiously optimistic that we will be able to show some actual savings. I know other municipalities have, gone from in-house and contracting it out. So I look forward to seeing the fruits of your labor. A very well thorough staff report, and I think it's doable the way you have it planned out. And yeah, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. I believe it was Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Thank you, gentlemen, for your report, and I'm pleasantly surprised to see this coming. I think this is the kind of thing we need to be doing is looking at where we're at, where we can change, where we can make things better. We have great employees at the township, and I think this is going to work out great. I'm looking forward to it. I think, when we have our own employees looking after these grounds and stuff, they're going to take that little bit of extra care, and they're going to care about what they're doing rather than the contractor just coming in, getting it cut. Doesn't care if he's cutting it in the rain or whatever. He's just getting it done and getting on to the next job. So, I mean, the numbers I'm hoping are going to come out the way you guys say, but even if we broke even on it, I think it would be a win. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from members of council? Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, gentlemen, for putting together this staff report. Thank you for bringing this issue forward. As been said, this is exactly the sort of thing that I was hoping for, the kind of looking at what we can do and how we can be more efficient. I think it was Deputy Mayor Warden said it's critical though that we document where where we fall, where we land at the end of the year, just where our assumptions correct and what we can save. So for that respect, I very much would like to look at this as sort of a test. So although normally I would very much about purchasing equipment, I think if we don't have enough equipment in-house to do this, I don't have an issue with us leasing on a short term to see, again, whether or not this is working out as the way we thought it would. I have a couple of questions. Well, one is a comment, couple of questions. Just quickly, there is a mistake on the front page of the staff report, just maybe something to fix so that when the public review it future, like on the very first page in the background section, the 3 years numbers that are provided, they don't add up to the grand total. I think it's 2016 and 2015. If you add those in, then the grand total makes sense. But my questions are, and it's because I'm a little bit confused in how the current split in terms of what it costs us today. I'm a little bit confused in terms of the split in terms of roadside mowing and then park and rec. If I understand correctly, we have 2 operators already on the roadside who are doing the roadside mowing, plus we contract out an additional unit with the operator and a unit together, and then that we contract out all the park grass cutting currently. So when we look at let's say for 2019, the 125,000, I believe it is, price to do the grass. What's the proportion in that number? What's the proportion that is roadside versus the proportion that is on the park and rec side?
I can, through you, Mr. Mayor, I can answer that question. The the grass cutting is $58,379, and the roadside would be $67,091.
Okay, sorry, could you repeat that again?
58,379 to the $67,091 for a grand total of 125,000.
Okay, all right. So the majority is still on the roadside. Okay, and in terms of equipment, so with the new we don't think that I understand you can't use one piece of equipment. 2 people can't use the same piece of equipment at the same time.
Right.
But with regards to the new rec tractor, is that not something that can be used to do some of this work?
Well, if you go back to one of the proposals that we made way back when I started, and I can't use that card anymore, so I won't use it. We wanted to use the tractor for the brush cutting that seemed to be a real concern to the residents, sweeping and also as a backhoe. But more importantly, the problem with that is that on certain grass areas, if you use a tractor of the weight that we currently have, especially if it rains at all, you're going to have indents of the tractor wheels that would actually end up causing perhaps more damage to the field. And
okay. Oh no, I follow. So what maybe I'm confused. What's the size of the tractor that you're wanting?
Oh, that would be for roads. That would be for the roadside. So I'll let Mr. McDonald answer that.
Yeah, thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, the tractor would be similar in size to the one we have. They're about a 60 horsepower tractor. We would have a side mount mower on it that we would use for cutting the roadsides. We have a similar tractor now with a side mount mower, and we also have our sidewalk unit, the trackless municipal tractor that has a boom on it that allows us to get to areas in the back slopes of the ditches that we wouldn't be able to access with your traditional farm type tractors. So it would be a tractor to be very similar to the current one we have.
Okay. Just because that sounds into me that maybe the rec tractor would be like, if I understand, we're not going to be taking any more roads and dedicating them to this activity. There's already 2, but then we're going to be adding 2 rec folks to it. So is there a potential then that they could use the rec tractor with one of these mowers and then be able to do the roadside ditching that would have been done by that third
Yeah.
individual, the contractor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I know Mr. Lattiser will comment on this, but we also have to recognize that there's many other areas, recreational trails such as the peanut line that we need to cut, and we're not doing a great job of that right now. This would allow us to pay more attention to those recreational trails and make sure that we're spending a little bit of more effort on enhancing that trail experience and pushing back that brush. We also have to cut the grass in our 2 lagoons a couple of times a year, and that's a fairly significant level of effort, as well as other municipal properties that we own that we need to cut on a fairly regular basis so that we don't end up with our bylaw folks after us as well. So we do have sufficient work to keep the 3 tractors, the 2 that we currently own, plus an additional one. There is absolutely no concern on either my part, Mr. Lattiser's, or Mr. Mills' part that these machines won't be busy right from the middle of May till likely the end of October.
Okay, if I could make just, I promise, last comment on this. In regards to the staffing, I see that we're talking about having having someone seasonal for the summer. And because we already have someone still in the winter, I have concerns that now the argument could be made that now we need an additional full-time person. And that, again, considering that this is more of a like a trial, I would like it to be approached as a trial. I would like to make sure that we're not, committing ourselves to hiring another full-time person.
You, Mr. Lattiser?
No, exactly. You're absolutely right. At this point, all I'm going to say is there's a future report coming about efficiencies within my department, and I think that people will be very pleased at, and I'll just leave it at that for the time being. But no, there's no position from my point of view that we are trying to add another person. This is strictly based on our needs because of the current climate, and I'm sure Mr. Mills can speak to this, that with the students funding up in the air, we sort of needed to secure this other position. And I just wanted to make one last point that we want this to be successful. And I think that in order for it to be successful, we needed some people with some experience. We have 2 very, very capable individuals that have that experience. And I think we have a third possibility. So I'll leave it at that. And just to ensure people that we really are looking at dotting our I's and crossing our T's. So Mr. Mills.
Yep, move over to Mr. Mills.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So one of the things we have to be mindful of is that we're following the collective agreement. And in this case, we are following the collective agreement, and hiring a seasonal staff member to do this is at no risk that we would have to actually add someone full-time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jaworski, did you have anything further?
No, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for, these questions here that are able to, probe a bit deeper into what we're doing here. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no problem. Those are things that as managers, we have to work through too, to ensure that we're complying with collective agreements and things. So keeps us on our toes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Ward, did you have a question or a comment?
No, I'm looking forward to seeing this, and I think it was well thought out. And Rick, thank you. I think this is Rick and Johan. I think this is going to be cost saving for the municipality, and I have no doubt that our parks will look better than last year.
Okay, thank you. I agree with the members of council in regards to the cost savings, the efficiencies. We're always looking for efficiencies, so I thank you, the 3 of you, for coming up with this report, and we look forward to seeing a report in the fall, and hopefully that the savings are there. And I agree in regards to what Councillor Lang was saying, that it's our staff doing it, so they'll have more care in regards to how the parks and stuff are going to look at the end of the day. So thank you for that report. And I'll go back to one more question from Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just one clarification. So we have our current trackless is going to be doing the work with the boom. So we have one roads department employee on that. We have one employee already dedicated to the current tractor we have. And then we're going to have the rental, which will be another roads department employee or a recreation roads.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, the third employee would be likely deployed from the roads department staff, the current staff.
Okay, and then on the recreation side, Mr. Laddiser, we're going to have somebody on the zero turn, the Cub Cadet, and then I see is it possible there's 2 push mowers in there? Those will just go along with each mower, or how will that work?
Right, it depends on the work, obviously that.
Just depends on the job site, I guess.
Correct.
So we'll have 2 people, two recreation cutting grass and 3 roads cutting grass.
2
and then-
plus 1 extra on the from recreation's point of view.
And 1 extra from recreation.
Yeah, seasonal.
A seasonal. Okay.
Just
I was just, I guess I was just trying to kind of put together. Mr. Orski brought up the point of the other tractor that we do currently have. I know it would be a lot of work to be flipping it from backhoe to flail mower constantly. I know it is enough work to do that. I was just kind of trying to justify we will still have another person in recreation that would at that point could be using that along with the summer student potentially. So no, I'm just wanted to account for all the equipment.
No, it's a very good point. And to Councillor Jaworski's point as well, and I thought I was going to comment on it, but I chose not to, but I will, if through you, Mr. Mayor, if it's okay, that there are a number of jobs that we need to do with the current tractor that we have. Like I said, we purchased 3 very crucial pieces of equipment, which is the sweeper, the backhoe, and the brush cutter. And the brush cutter, not only on the peanut line, but also at Glen Walter Park, there's a number of overhanging branches that need to be addressed. There's also a major job, preventative maintenance, if you will, in Martintown, where we need to use the backhoe for a backflow so that we do not have the sewage coming back into the Martintown facility. There's also the wharf that needs a major cleaning. So these are all kinds of things. And Mr. McDonald and I spoke about, well, could we get away with one or not having to purchase? But we determined between what we have to do and what he and his roads have to do, we're going to be sharing that tractor from time to time and making the most of it. So it just didn't, again, we want to make sure that this thing works. And we didn't want to have any roadblocks, no pun intended. Maybe there was. No roadblocks that would not allow us to do the job. So we've talked a lot about this.
Okay, no, I guess that's it for me. I just one final comment would be just that we remember all of this equipment is stamped South Glengarry and none rec and none roads.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you again, gentlemen, for your report. I have a motion moved by Martin Lang, second by Sam McDonnell. Be resolved that the council receives staff report 57-2020 and approves the recommendation of administration for all grass cutting and roadside mowing be completed by the township staff. You heard the motion. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you. Okay, we'll move into other business. April 15th, Rules of Planning Act application appeal periods and notice of decisions. Mrs. Haley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So before you in your agenda, there is a planning opinion, or excuse me, a legal opinion on the recent changes that have been made by our provincial government, known as Regulations 14920, that were published on April 15th. So just last Wednesday, they came in perfect timing to place them on the agenda. So you're going to see in here that the purpose of this new regulation makes it clear that it applies to the Planning Act, simply because when the Municipal Emergency Management Act, or excuse me, the Municipal Emergency Act was previously passed and declared when the province declared a state of emergency, it was unclear as to whether all timelines were suspended. So you had many lawyers across the province trying to provide their best interpretation of where it applied or not. So now we have more clear guidelines to ensure that what we can do and what we can't do. When you read this legal opinion, you'll notice that it is very clear that any applications that move forward and where a decision is made, whether it's by a committee of adjustment or a council, it is subject to a decision, of course, it's subject to a notice of decision, and it's subject to a 20-day appeal period. Your decisions and your notice of decisions do not come into effect until after the state of emergency is terminated. And so that's really important to note that if we do move forward with, let's say, a committee of adjustment meeting, we hear applications, we make a decision, then a decision can be issued noting that day of the meeting. However, the decision has to be reissued following the declaration of the state of emergency. In the case of committee minor variances within 10 days of the termination, subject to also a 20-day appeal period. And then you'll notice that in the legal opinions that we received, whether it's been opinions directly from a lawyer that have been, I believe, discussed with you, or this general opinion, they're also cautioning us as to when and how we can hold our public meetings, because we're still obligated to conform to the Planning Act. So for example, zoning amendments are going to be a little bit more difficult to proceed with than a committee of adjustment. When you look at this opinion, they talk about different sections of the Planning Act. Those sections pertain to official plan amendments, zoning bylaw amendments, specifically issuing notice of decisions, as well as approvals of subdivisions, consents, and committee of adjustments. Those are the sections that they're covering. So if there's any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. I would have to say, though, that this is a little bit of a moving target, because since this was issued, there's been a couple of other major law firms in the province that have issued an opinion as well that differs slightly, let's put it that way. So I find everyone is still learning. They're trying to do the best they can to determine how we would move forward if and when we move forward. And we're all trying to learn from each other.
Okay, thank you for your report. Do we have any questions or comments from members of council? Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Haley. So just to make sure I'm clear, so basically, our work of, that requires public meetings, that requires committee of adjustment, it can go forward as long as we follow the guidelines that are being put forward in terms of physical distancing, but that does in effect make things more difficult. And also the decisions, if I'm understanding, we can make a decision, but then it's basically like it has to be reissued once the state of emergency is lifted. So what is, does it make sense to try and keep moving forward with these applications, or does it make sense to try, because in effect, since they're not really moving forward, does it just make more sense to be delaying these till when the state of emergency is lifted?
Mm-hmm. So in working with our clerk Kaylin and our CEO, Mr. Mills, we've been talking about how we should proceed. And what we've decided so far is that if there's a pressing application that has, tighter timelines than others, then we should look at the best way possible of moving forward. So I'm going to give you a minor variance as an example. If we have a minor variance, let's say that's subject to, or that's a condition of a consent or a condition of a sale of a property, we could consider moving that one forward. And then once the emergency is terminated, then within hopefully within a day or two, I'm able to reissue a notice and then have the 20-day appeal period. So it would probably save that person about 20 days. And the reason why I'm giving minor variances as an example is because you will recall at our last meeting, our clerk brought forward an amending bylaw to our procedural bylaw that included committees of adjustment to be allowed to be done electronically. And that way then you're still able to keep your social distancing rules in place, the prohibition of public gatherings more than 5, we don't have to worry about, and things like that. However, dealing with the zoning amendment, if we were to have one that needed to move forward, I'm not sure I would be recommending it. And we've had detailed discussions with our CAO on this as well, and our lawyer, Tony Fleming, is because we can't give people the perfect opportunity to participate and rebut and speak to an issue when we don't have a public meeting like we've always had in the past. However, as I mentioned, there's things that are changing. We're watching the other municipalities. I think it's important to watch the bigger municipalities like the cities of Ottawa or Kingston or Burlington or Waterloo, when they have legal counsel on staff, some of them that we can learn from them and work with our colleagues that way to see what's happening. What I can tell you is right now we have no application where an applicant is pushing me to move forward. They've all been understanding. They all feel they can wait. There's a couple of applications that would be related to a building permit. However, they can't proceed with construction anyway because the building permit wasn't issued in advance of April 4th. So as I mentioned, everybody's been understanding so far. However, if we did have a resident or an applicant that found it to be very beneficial for them to proceed, I would reach out to our committee of adjustment and work with our clerk, Kaylin, to see what we can do to ensure that we are providing the most transparent way possible for people to participate.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Warden.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Joanne, just a question, like we're not sure how long this is going to go on. Would it be beneficial to reach out to the people who are needing a committee of adjustment or a minor variance for whatever reason, and moving forward with it, knowing that as soon as the emergency is lifted, you can start the process and issue it off, saving them an extra 20 at a minimum, 20 days. And then like, is there any advantage to that? Like, do you see, like, I'm just thinking like we're going to have like 10 or 15 applications. We don't know how long this is going to take, you know?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I currently don't have that many applications, although there's some people that are hesitating on applying simply because I'm having those discussions with them. Secondly, I think it's worth having our clerk maybe provide some comments as to how she feels these meetings can be organized, arranged, held to ensure participation and transparency.
So yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, we have spoken about it, Ms. Haley and Mr. Mills. I think we could have it much like this webinar, with the difference being that anyone who we send a notice to, we could provide them with a link, which would allow them either to remote in via video, but we also have a teleconference option, so people can call in as well. And those would be opportunities where they could make representations.
So hypothetically, we could proceed, with our committee of adjustments, if any of them come in, and then once this is lifted, all you have to do is reissue the notice, and then start their period starts. So potentially getting to them to the front of the line to start whatever they need to do.
Correct.
That was to Joanne, but
yeah.
Oh yes, sorry. Sorry about that. Yeah, as I mentioned, it would save the individual maybe 20 or 30 days.
So,
okay, it might be just something we want to mention to them if they're coming in and talking about applications. So I agree with Deputy Mayor Warden. If it's just one step closer for them to get started after this emergency is lifted.
Maybe for our next council meeting or something, if any of the ones that come in wanted it on, maybe we could have, like we've been doing before, at our next council meeting, which is a couple weeks away. And then if this is still going on, well, at least it'll be dealt with. If it gets passed, then it just triggers what you had said about reissuing the notice and then starting the 20-day period.
So just to give you an example, we wouldn't be able to meet the timelines for the next council meeting, which I believe is May 4th, but we certainly would be able to meet the timelines for the following meeting, which would be May 19th. And at that point, hopefully we're maybe not dealing with a declared state of emergency, but that is unknown to all of us at this time.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Not seeing none. Thank you for your report, Mrs. Haley. We look forward to getting more information as the weeks go by. Number 2 is the CIP update and request for direction from Mrs. Haley.
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is our going into our second full year of our CIP program. Our council approved $60,000 in the 2020 budget. Staff had come up with intake periods. The first one was established for May 4th with an intake in the fall and then an intake before year end. However, there was plans to make changes to the community improvement plan to possibly remove those intakes and just do a continuous intake all year. The May 4th intake was decided to be delayed in discussions with our CAO, Mr. Mills. He felt it was very important to have this discussion with council to make sure that you were giving us the direction that was needed as to whether this program proceeded in 2020 or did it get delayed or did it get deferred altogether. And the reason for that is because it could be very difficult for some of our businesses to be able to come up with the funds to match the dollars that are required for some of the applications, like there's 50% funding, or it also may be very difficult for them to obtain the 2 quotes from either contractors or stores that are closed that you're not able to go in and shop. And at the same time though, some businesses who may not be affected may be looking forward to taking advantage of applying to the program if they're successful. I was speaking with 4 businesses at the beginning of this year that were contemplating submitting an application. It's never a guarantee. All those 4 businesses have now chosen to wait. In fact, they've not given me any indication that they were ready to move forward with the May intake anyway due to the restrictions of COVID-19. But right now we're waiting for, or we're willing to work with council and see what your thoughts are and how we should move forward and what would be the best decision for our businesses. And I shouldn't just say businesses because there are also property owners that are on our main street areas or in the community improvement plan areas. So they could be private residents as well that own homes, storefronts, things like that.
Okay, thank you. We have a few questions. I'll go to Councillor McDonnell, then Deputy Mayor Warden, then Councillor Lang.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Ms. Haley. I guess I have a few questions. I sit as I guess for transparency, I sit as the chair for CIP with and Mr. Deputy Mayor Warden. I guess there were some suggestions made to update the I guess some of where we would go as far as paying money and how much we would cap it at on a few different things. Accessibility was one that came to mind. Are we still interested in at looking at that to maybe make those changes?
So I can answer that, Mr. Mayor. So let me explain to you the process and how it works to change a CIP. Very similar to a zoning amendment process. It's a very public process. So what happens is we would rewrite sections of the document that are required in order to meet our needs. As you are aware, we had this discussion with our CIP committee in November of 2019. I've reached out to the committee, I believe in early March, to confirm the changes that they were looking for. What I would then do is compile those requested changes and present them to council because it's a council document, not a committee approved document. Council would then assure me that either I'm on the right track and add your comments or further changes, or and then they would instruct me to proceed to complete the report. I would then rewrite the sections of the report, schedule a public meeting 20 days in advance. We have to have a public meeting for community input. Following the public meeting, we then make amendments to the plan or the report if required. And then we send it to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing for approval before bringing it back to council for approval. So because we're in a very public process, very similar to what we would face in a zoning amendment, it's not going to move forward as quickly as we thought it was going to move forward. I'm in a position where I should be able to present to council, maybe not the first meeting in May, but the second meeting in May, all of the required changes based on the feedback we've received from the committee and members of the public. And then from there, we can proceed, and hopefully we're in a less restrictive work environment come summer that would be able to have those changes. So in the meantime, the plan remains as status quo, and it could be made available to the public, subject to the discussion and the results of tonight's meeting.
Okay, I guess subsequent then in that case, I would like to see this this program move forward. I think, as you said, Miss Haley, there are a lot of businesses that that not necessarily are closed. I mean, one comes to mind is restaurants in the village. Should they, should there be an upgrade on the inside, be it for accessibility or things such as that, where they could still operate? And whereas in normal times they would have to close their dining room to do these updates and go to only takeout, they're at takeout only now. There's some opportunities I think here for some businesses are seriously feeling a hit, but there are others that may have the opportunity still to do some work should we get that opened up soon enough. And we are only in the 4th month of the year. There's still quite a few left to go. Hopefully we'll be opening up and construction will be starting to take place. So I would like to see it continue on and not defer it for an entire year. I'd like to just go kind of status quo and maybe open it up, see if there is any appetite. If there is, we can go from there.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Warden.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, same comments as Councillor McDonnell. Joanne and I had a conversation today, and I knew we couldn't move forward with the changes that we've kind of discussed as a committee. I do think we need to move forward and have the meeting as scheduled for the 4th of May. May the 4th be with you. I think that I think there's 1 or 2 applications that have been submitted. So I'd like to see them dealt with, and I believe we can do it with in a safe manner, and because not all businesses are affected equally from this thing, and there could be some people waiting for us to go ahead with this.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I won't take long. Councillor McDonnell and Deputy Mayor Warden have covered what was basically wanting to say, but if there's a chance for people to get back to work sooner than later, let's approve these things. And if they can do stuff safely, or even if it's just approved and they're able to start as soon as the restrictions are lifted, let's encourage our local economy to keep moving. So I'm in favor.
Thank you. Great comments. I agree with the other 3 members of council. So Ms. Haley, I think you know the direction in regards to moving forward. I think you have a comment.
Yes, please. I'd just like to provide one point of clarification. The May 4th date, as much as that was chosen by administration, it was never advertised because of the virus starting. And that's when Mr. Mills had asked it to be discussed with council. You may have noticed it was on our last council agenda, but unfortunately it didn't get pulled forward for discussion. So we lost a couple of weeks there. So if we were to move forward, May 4th cannot be the intake date, simply because we need to provide our residents and business owners approximately a 4 to 6 week time frame to prepare their application, obtain the quotes that are required. So don't be surprised when you see administration having advertising a different date for intake. And at this point, we have received no applications for 2020, but it'll be an opportunity for us to now reach out to the people that were interested. And that way then we can see if they're still willing to apply. So we'll work with our communications coordinator to come up with the ads that are necessary to advance the program. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I think council's agreeable in regards if the date needs to change, we're fine with that. So.
Okay,
Councillor Jaworski, I guess you had a question or comment?
Thank you. Just came to mind now, when it comes to the intake date, what did we not discuss in the past, just because we didn't use up all the fund pass, that perhaps the intake would be a rolling intake, so there's sort of a start date, but then we accept them as they come. Can you refresh my memory if that what decision of how it will be moving forward, or if this was going to have a set intake and a set end.
Yes, so through you, Mr. Mayor, in the community improvement plan document itself, it doesn't say when your intake dates are. So that means that provides flexibility to administration and council to pick those dates. In discussions with the committee, we talked about whether we should have a date or not, or whether we just have a constant intake. The results that I got from the committee members were very mixed, and some of the members felt strongly on advertising a date because it makes people work to completing a submission. And then what the goal is that when we have 2 or 3 or 4 applications, it makes it worthwhile for our committee to get together and make a decision. Also, when we advertise a date, it'll be an opportunity then for us to make time available to the public to help them with their applications. So we could schedule staff time by phone call to assist them, explain to them why they need the 2 quotes and things like that. It doesn't mean to say that we will always do a constant intake, but now that we're in phase 2, we need to promote the program more because we've opened up different areas. So one thing that I've heard from council and members of the committee is to no longer have phased areas, open up the entire municipality in terms of the CIP areas. When I say the entire municipality, I don't mean every road or every area. I mean all of the hamlets or settlement areas, and allow the constant intake to come in. And so we need to do some communication on that to provide that information to the public so that it's clear.
Well, if I could, I would like to support the idea of doing more of a constant intake, particularly considering the current situation. I think, I think flexibility really is like the order of the day right now. And so if there are people who are ready and, but I don't think adding a date, I understand like working towards a deadline sometimes is very helpful. I feel like right now that might not be the time though. I think we need to sort of work with people where they are.
So in listening to the committee, their suggestions were to keep a date, but if council tells me right now that they don't want a date, they want a constant intake and we're constantly promoting it, then we can certainly proceed that way. I was taking the advice of the committee to stick to intake dates.
Well, you know my opinion.
Yeah, so we know your opinion. Deputy Mayor Warren agrees. He was shaking his head and yes. Councillor McDonnell is agreeable and so is Martin Lang. So I think what council's looking
direction.
I agree.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, we appreciate it. Number 3 is the modification to current burn ban. Chief Robertson, welcome.
There we go. Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On March 19th, I implemented a total burn ban for all outdoor burning within the township. The purpose of implementing the burn ban, it wasn't related to fire risk. Everybody knows it is quite wet out currently, but it was to limit physical distancing for our staff, to limit any non-essential responses for their department. So currently, if a burn complaint or concern is received by our dispatch center, only myself as fire chief and senior officers are advised. At that point, we investigate and respond accordingly. Stations are only activated if needed. So it all helps to hold off on our fire services from being activated unless it's a true emergency. And of course, at that point, we will respond. So the agriculture community, though, has expressed a desire to resume limited burning events in order to clear brush, vegetation that is impeding on upcoming spring planting. We all know that that's a very important time of year. There have even been local media editorials that were speaking to the same thing that have come out since I submitted this report. So many are talking about this. It is a concern of the agriculture community. So the purpose of this report is just to advise you that it's my intention to allow these limited agriculture burns to resume as of April 22nd, so this Wednesday. There are limitations to those. All requests must be made directly to myself as fire chief and will be authorized on an individual basis after determining size, location, material type, those types of factors. and only vegetation piles that are impeding cropping and or livestock operations will be permitted. So this is going to be quite limited. There shouldn't be a huge number of burn events. The residential and the rural burn permits will remain subject to the burn ban at this point. It is my intention, I'm hoping with some of the processes and procedures in place that are going to allow our stations not to be activated. I'm hoping in the coming weeks to lift the burn ban. I would like to do it in conjunction with other neighbors so that we're all on the same page. I would say probably 80% of Southern Ontario is all have burn bans, but I am hearing similar issues in other like municipalities. So we continue to monitor the public health concerns of and the issues that would affect our staff, and we'll lift any burn bans as early as we possibly can. So that's just an information report. Are there any comments from council?
Thank you, Chief, for your report. Councillor McDonnell, then Deputy Mayor Warden.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chief Robertson. I know I've had a lot of comments from both the ag community as well as residents, and this I guess will be a prelude to our one of our next topics, which is the leaf waste and yard waste. I've had a lot of people very upset that, well, I shouldn't say upset, but more concerned that we're getting later and later in the springtime here, and people are concerned with yard waste. I know it isn't. In my opinion, it's not a make or break thing, but for the ag community, it is, as far as getting that brush out of the fields. I know we often have significant amounts of trees and branches come out of the bush into the field, and you have to get rid of them somehow. So I guess looking to that, it would be nice to lift it off the rural and residential areas, but as far as at least opening it up to agriculture for now is a great help. So I thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Warden.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I've been receiving a lot of calls, and there's been a lot of comments on social media about people just, wanting to have little yard fires and stuff. So, and I can just see if they see the fires going in the fields without the proper rollout of this ban being rescinded or somewhat rescinded, I think you're going to see a slew of fires. So I think we need to get the word out as best we can, and just because I know as soon as they see or smell the smoke, oh, we must be able to burn. And I guess the only other question that I would say is that, so all requests are to come into you formally written, like through an email, so we have written documentation, and then you're going to respond that way, or how's that going to go?
I would say, just due to the nature of the applicants, I would say currently the vast majority, if not 100%, would be verbal by phone call.
But that doesn't leave us really anywhere. Like we had a farmer last fall that burned way too much, and it was a he said, she said back and forth between yourself and the homeowners. And I think that it needs to be all done in writing, so we have something to back up, because I don't think that residents should be having to close their windows because there was a miscommunication between ourselves and the landowner. I think we need to get better at documenting the requests in writing and the responses in writing to protect ourselves and the applicants as well.
Okay, thank you for that comment. I will do a bit of pondering on exactly how we can do that. It's not complicated to do it. The only issue is a farm may have multiple sites and multiple time frames and all those types of complicating details. But I'll take those comments to heart and into my considerations, and I will make sure that everything is logged for sure. We'll have a record, and I will make all efforts to get those in writing also. So,
And then,
oh yeah,
right.
Go ahead.
Right, and right now during this emergency, this is only for what you're deeming to be impeding. Like if they just want to burn a pile because they got nothing to do, per se, you're not approving those. But if it's impeding the spring work, you're going to permit it, but just not for the sake of burning a pile, kind of thing, until we get out of this emergency.
Exactly, and also land clearing or new land clearing endeavors will not be, which speaks to some of the items you talked about for last year. They'll not be allowed for this. Those types of properties, we will look at those as the year progresses through the season. Mm-hmm. But the imminent ones are just so that the cropping season, which is going to happen in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we hope, those details, those locations will be lifted. So to your first comments on messaging, it is going to be a very important part of this is for myself to message this to the public. We have various tools that we can do that, and we will in the coming days so that everybody's aware. And
may I make a suggestion, Chief?
Please do.
I received, I have a burn permit, and whenever the fire ban was put on, I received a text message. Maybe that's an avenue you could use to set it out to say that partial burn ban lifted, please call for details or something to that effect. And that might be an easy way to get it out to at least the burn permit holders.
Yes. Yes, and currently that is just shy of 1,000 permit holders from present and past who receive those messages. So that goes a long way to the number of properties that we have. So.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chief Robinson, for your report. I would like to agree with a few things that Deputy Mayor Warden has said. I mean, in terms of this process, I think it really is critical that it is very well documented, very clearly documented, and actually specifically for the reasons, the complexity reasons you mentioned, that, you know, that's different properties, different areas. I think all the more reason that these things need to be clearly documented and that everyone's exactly on the same page. Now, I do understand that the current burn ban is to not have nuisance calls to our volunteer firefighters. However, I have a hard time understanding how I feel like this will be opening up nuisance calls to the fire service, and so I have a hard time understanding how it will be different than if we did a partial lift on residential burn bans. I feel like it's sort of, once you've opened that, you're sort of exposing the service to the same kinds of issues. So if you could maybe speak to that a bit, just so I can understand better why we can't allow something a bit for the residents as well.
Well, basically, it is my thoughts are that we're not going to have a lot of these burn events. We're talking about only a few per day is what my feeling is from driving the countryside, from hearing the requests of some of these landowners. I don't think it's a huge number of fires that will be happening. So it's just a risk reward analysis, I guess, for lack of a better term. It's the more fires that we allow, the more concerns from the public, such that we have in most regular years or most non-COVID-19 type climates. we're often getting either complaints from neighbors because of burn events, or concerns from neighbors, or if they see smoke off in the distance, they think it's an emergency. So we do get a lot of those requests. Any of those requests or comments or concerns that are brought forward, they will go directly to me, as opposed to in the past where a full station was actually activated. So, and that was done as a whole across the county. That process was put in so that the full stations were activated, because of the fact that a lot of our neighboring or partner municipalities do not have staff available in the fire service to go out and investigate without activating a full station. That's why it was done. We are lucky enough to have the ability to have career staff who can go out and do the investigations and deal with those. So I'm hoping the easiest way for the fire service would be to completely lift the ban, but I still do have concerns in the short term about the possibility of our stations being activated. So if this all works out well, within a few weeks, few short weeks, I hope to lift the ban completely. But we'll have to see as time goes by. So.
Okay, but
Does
so as
that
I
answer your
understand,
question?
no, yes, so but I guess it sounds like this is where there is perhaps a benefit of having, you know, the full-time fire staff that we do have, but that might give us some additional flexibility here and potentially lifting a ban sooner than perhaps those that don't have that. So if that is a possibility, I hope we take advantage of it as soon as reasonably possible.
And we have been doing that for the last 2 weeks steady. We've been dealing with numerous responses. So in that form. So luckily we have not had to, our call volumes are down considerably for this time of year, and it's because of limitations on burning and medical calls. So
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I know we have a question from Councillor Lang, but I just want to make a quick comment in regards to lifting the burn ban in a couple of weeks. As the warmer weather is getting closer, especially in the middle of May, I guess would be hopefully that the warmer weather is going to be here. You know, across the province and across the counties and across the country, we're telling people to stay home, or asking people to stay home as much as we possibly can. So, you know, by lifting that burn ban and giving families an opportunity to stay home on a weekend or a Saturday evening or even a Thursday evening, to go in their backyards and have a small bonfire, I think it would give them a little bit more incentive to stay in their own properties and stay in their own backyards. You know, I think we need to make it clear to the public that you know, we don't want to be called on an hourly basis to go out as fire departments to you know, for fire complaints. But I think you know, if they respect the rules in regards to what the rules are in respect of having a small bonfire in their backyard, then there won't be any issues. But if there's going to be issues and we're out there too often, then we can put that burn ban back on very quickly. So I think I'd like to see that maybe at our next council meeting, that we lift either the whole burn ban or at least giving families the opportunities to have small family bonfires on their own property. But I'll move to Martin Lang. And
comment, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr.
Yeah, just thank you for that. That's an excellent point. When COVID-19 first came down and the emergency acts that were set into Ontario, we thought this was the best route forward, and like the rest of the province, and it really has paid off dividends for us. But at this point, we can, after analyzing it, I think the first step was the ag community, and very, very shortly, hopefully, to lift the whole ban for that exact reason. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Thank you, Chief Robertson, for the report, and I think it's going to be helpful. On our farm, I think we can get away without any this spring. We'll see how it goes. I wanted to speak a little bit about what Deputy Mayor Warden had said about documenting and this sort of thing. I'm hopeful that you can find a way that you can do what you need to do as far as documenting, but keeping it as easy as it has been for the farm community. We've got a great working relationship with the chief. You know, and as farmers, we're running around and we're never 100% sure what we're going to do some days. And some days, you know, it might be 2 PM and we say, okay, we've got this small pile of brush we need, and then a phone call is so quick and easy to do. If there could be some way that maybe you could document on your end, and then maybe even send a confirming text or something like this, so that there is something, there is a bit of a paper trail or something, but still keep it simple and easy and timely for us not having to fill out a form and send that in and this sort of thing. So I see the benefits of both. So we'll leave that in your capable hands to figure out. But and I would like to comment a little bit on what our mayor said, that we are looking forward to being able to kind of get a little bit of semblance of normal, and you know, at least be normal in our own backyard. You know, and most of society is kind of cooped up at home, and it would be nice if they could do some normal summer things. Even if they can't have the neighbors over, they could at least, you know, sit around the fire with the kids. So let's hope that comes sooner than later. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Not hearing none. Thank you, Chief, for your report, and we look forward to the next one in May 4th. Okay, we'll move to the additional ones that came out of the information purposes only. Number 4 was the departmental update to council. I'll ask Mr. Mills to talk about that first.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, through you. I know that, well, the management staff, I mean, it's my report, but we provided you with a lot of information to digest there. A couple things I want to highlight before there may be some questions. In your strategic planning sessions before my time, council requested that management staff provide updates on their departmental plans on a quarterly basis. So this is your first one. Within that, you'll see it's broken down into 3-month intervals. The first 3 months, just keep in mind, I mentioned last council meeting that there are some things there that'll be deferred over to months 4 to 6, just because for the last 6 weeks, almost 6 weeks, it really hasn't been business as usual. But I can tell you that staff have been working really hard to get their action plans in place. So you'll see that they've highlighted key actions they want to do, and then transfer that on over into their critical paths. And we're monitoring that. I'm the one who is tracking and meeting with departmental managers, and so we meet regularly, and then we go over what we're doing as a team. I would also highlight that at the end of this week, I'm meeting with, we've asked managers to bring back some more efficiencies related to their budgets, which can align with this. Before I open it up to questions, a couple more things. If you look at the strategic plan, there's about 6 or 7 things that the 3-month action plans and the critical paths have clearly, we're working towards those goals. So 1.4 was mentioned tonight, actually, opportunities to develop a connected community with internet and cell coverage and natural gas. 1.5, which is deferred a little bit, is the business plan for the regional airport, which has sort of come to a little bit of a standstill, but we're working on diligently through the Airport Commission. In goal 2 with infrastructure and sustainability, Mr. McDonald and Mr. McDonald, along with staff, are working diligently on our asset management plans, and you'll see that in there. 2.3, internal financing strategy to support infrastructure. That's the capital priorities plan that we're working on. And when you look at how it's been established with reserves in this municipality, it's something you can all be proud of, especially those of you been here a long time. And in goal 3, even with the grass cutting tonight with you, when report that you saw, there's some cross training amongst staff there that where recreation's working with road staff, and that's also going on within the office in terms of some cross training. We have a real opportunity now in terms of the configuration of the office space where there are only a few people in the office. So we're looking closely as to how we can get that into place a lot more quickly with office space. Goal 4 is kind of using my hand here. we've had to slow down a little bit on terms of, you talk about quality of life, everyone's in their home now for the most part, but the recreation plan and the active living charter, that's sort of at a standstill. So there's not as much on goal 4. But in goal 5, we've had to really work hard on our communications, and the communications, working with Megan and staff to develop internal and external communications and diversifying how we're communicating. So that's in a nutshell, I guess, my update. What I want to finish with is that often as managers, we're the ones who come to meetings and talk to you about, we are the ones that come to meetings and talk to you about the progress, and we do the staff reports. But what you see within those critical paths are the boots on the ground. So within, whether it's corporate service, I'm going to leave someone out, so I'm not going to list them off. But the staff that's on the front lines right now, especially that's out of the office, but also those coming into the office and working remotely, they're the ones who've actually, that's what our real work is with the community and with the people that we serve. And I think you're being served really well. I'm new to this, but as managers, we're committing to every 3 months providing you with the updates. And I really want to I think Crystal's on the line, but so Crystal's, as you know, new exec assistant, and she probably got tired of me after a while with the critical paths and putting this together. But I want to thank her and all the managers for all the hard work they put into this, because it's pretty comprehensive, and I would say that we're pretty proud of it. The very last thing, we're going to talk about unfinished business at the end. You see a lot of business here. I'll just put it out there, when we're done, as we get along with the unfinished business, if council would consider that this is really the business in front of you and it's comprehensive, that if we were to add the unfinished business to the list and gave you updates regularly anytime you asked, would you consider that rather than have the unfinished business listing that we talk about every 2 weeks? So I'll finish with that and entertain any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mills. Councillor Jaworski, you're the one that asked to pull this, so I'm not sure what your questions or comments were.
Sure. Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mills, for your overview of the report. That was very helpful. It certainly helped me better tie all the information together. It's very interesting as a first look, because for me, this is the first time that I've seen really more nuts and bolts about what each department is doing. So that is that's very interesting, and I'm assuming there's a lot of value for you with your general managers to have that as a tool to discussing on what they're working on and their priorities and where they may need more resources or support. One thing from my perspective, when I was asking for this, is for me personally, I'm not sure what the rest of council was thinking, that for me very much was looking for the departmental plans very specific to achieving our strategic plan, because it seemed that was something that we didn't have in the past, and that's why we didn't have a lot of forward motion on our strategic plan in the past. So for me, very much, I appreciate all this additional detail, but I think for me, if it's possible to sort of maybe more focus on those items that are directly linked to moving the strategic plan forward, that would be that's definitely my main interest with this document. But no, this is excellent. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Warden.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Tim and Crystal and other staff members that worked on this. It's a very comprehensive and thorough report. Tim, I'm not ready to give up the unfinished business yet until I get comfortable with this much information all in one kind of report. It was quite daunting when I started going down and all the colors, and I could agree to in the future to get to somewhere where this is the report that, like, it's 2 in 1. but I need some time to adjust. But I could see us getting to that where this becomes the unfinished business. Very thorough. And I think, I mean, there's a lot of it's very rare. This is probably one of the most thorough reports that I've ever seen detailing, for Glenn Walter scheduling, it's color coded, and then the Medco keys and the facility audits. So this is, it's very detailed, and I greatly appreciate it, but I'm not ready to give up my unfinished business yet. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think the unfinished business, hopefully it gets smaller and smaller, and then we'll follow right into this report as time goes along in the near future. So thank you for your report, Mr. Mills.
Thank you.
So the next one was the leaf and yard waste. This is Councillor Jaworski.
No, it was me. Well, we both, whatever, it doesn't matter.
I thought it was Councillor Jaworski.
Go ahead, Stephanie.
All right, thank you.
Councillor Jaworski.
That's all right. Yeah, so thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, no, when it comes to the leaf and yard waste, I just wanted to have a bit of clarification from Mr. McDonald, because I believe, or maybe I'm confused, that last year there was it did not occur, but then it is scheduled for May 11th per this info report. And considering the situation about the burn ban, I would expect that people are actually going to have quite a bit larger things that they're going to put out to the road. Basically, they're going to have a larger volume of things that they want to pick up. And is there a risk that the contractor would potentially be overwhelmed, and then the cost would be higher than what I assume has already been previously agreed to?
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the question, I don't believe that there will be a risk of having escalating costs. You are quite likely correct in that there will more than likely be additional volumes of material. People are spending a little more time in their yards, and by the time the May 11th date comes around, there might be a fair bit of leaf and yard waste. That being said, though, I think it's incumbent upon the municipality, and we've had this discussion in our management meetings, to promote other options to bagging leaves and grass clippings, to looking at in situ solutions for composting and for mulching. So we're going to be heightening our promotions of those activities. The contractor is obligated to collect the leaf and yard waste as per the price they've quoted. They're going to be traveling the roads of the municipality regardless of how much material is out there. So leaf and yard waste can be packed fairly tightly into one of the compactor trucks. So I don't think that there's a risk. I think we have a contractual agreement with the contractor, and they will have to deliver on the requirements of that contract.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you for that additional information, and I hope that as we move forward doing our own grass mowing, or doing more of our own grass mowing, I hope we'll walk the walk and be the models as well in terms of mulching and posting our own waste. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor Warden and Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I guess the question that I had was, I'd spoken with Tim, the CAO, briefly, and we just were talking about a number of different things. Well, I was just wondering, would it not be possible for us to make allow residents to dump this waste at our landfill free of charge if we had a specific area? And I'm not talking going forward, kind of just in this COVID time where people are just bored to high heavens, and their yard is immaculate and they're just waiting to get rid of it. If we could, during normal dump hours, permit yard waste to be dumped in a specific area free of charge. I think it would be crazy to do an additional collection, but give them the option if they wanted to go on their own time and to our landfill and dump it. Is that something that we could do? And I don't think there'd be a large cost to that, but I could be wrong.
I believe we have that. I believe we have that now, Deputy Mayor Warden, and I think that's in the report, to be honest with you, but I'll ask Mr. McDonald to answer that question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. We do receive leaf and yard waste and branches with no tipping fees applied.
Perfect. But could we maybe advertise it? Because I don't think there's a lot of people realize that they could maybe throw it on our website or something.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, we could potentially do that. I caution, and maybe to Councillor Jaworski's point, I believe there's other promotions for mulching and composting that we need to put priority to. But in this situation now, I don't think it's unreasonable to advise people that the landfill sites will receive leaf and yard waste.
Okay, thank you.
Especially over the last couple of weeks that the weather's been half decent to have people been out there cleaning their yards. So and they've been waiting in regards to getting rid of that stuff. So if it's an opportunity, I suppose, to bring it to the landfill, especially with the burn ban on that, we can't burn anything. So it might be an opportunity to get rid of it very quick.
Yeah.
I'll move over to Councillor McDonnell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess to Ms. Jaworski's point and a bit to Deputy Mayor Warden, it's a great opportunity that we're allowing people to go to the dump with no tipping fee to dump their leaf and yard waste. The only issue with that is that's making the assumption that everybody has access to a pickup truck or a trailer of some sorts. Is there any way, I know in the fall last year, we didn't have a specific day for yard waste collection. We just went on a rolling schedule. Would that make more sense this year, considering that there is going to be, in my opinion, or I guess you could kind of say the general consensus here is we're going to have a higher volume come that one day. And I know it is a contractual thing, but part of the contract for the garbage collection company, but would it not be better maybe to just open it up and maybe lift our bag limit for a few weeks? Just let people get as much as they can out, or maybe keep our bag limit and roll out a few bags, or 8 bags isn't a whole lot at the end of the day, but even whenever you can get it out over, say, 2-3 weeks, you can get it in your garage or alongside the wall and move it out over time.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I understand and appreciate the concern. However, I would not suggest we go forward with any thoughts to increase our bag limit. And the reason why is when we do a leaf and yard waste collection, that material is not dumped in with the regular household waste. It is dumped in a separate area. We allow it to compost over time, and we can use it in future for cover material and for capping. If we increased the bag limit beyond 8, the downside of that is that we are losing capacity in our landfill at a greater rate, because we're putting leaf and yard waste in with household waste, and that will fill our landfill site in a more rapid pace than what we would expect it to be. So I understand the circumstances now with the leaf and yard waste. I do not think that increasing our bag limit is advisable.
Even if we kept the bag limit, though, are people still able to put their yard and leaf waste out? I understand it does limit it takes some of our capacity, but I mean, leaves and sticks do break down quite quickly compared to plastic bags and containers.
Yeah. And we, if a resident has 8 bags out, we don't go through the bags to see if it's leaf and yard waste or household waste. We collect 8 bags and they go to the landfill site.
Okay, thank you. I think just what Deputy Mayor Warden was saying earlier, maybe just promoting it more in regards to the landfill sites being open. Councillor Jaworski's in regards to more on the recycling side of it, I guess, in composting the leaves and so on, and letting them know that the landfill site is out and that we do allow up to 8 bags per week at the roadside. So I don't think it's going to be a major issue. I just think we need to let them know what all the options are, and hopefully they follow one of those and we get the yards cleaned up quicker than we think they will be.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, if there's nothing further on that one, we'll move to the 2021 budget dates. Mr. McDonald, I know it was Deputy Mayor Warden that requested it, but
Yes, thank you. It's just to bring it up, November 13th is a Friday, November 27th is a Friday. In the past few years, we've typically gone to mentioning a little later and closer to the time, and we're trying to accommodate schedules. This is an attempt just to settle the date. I'd imagine most people have those Fridays available now, and if they don't, the next Friday would be. So it's a good way to put that spot in your calendar, and then we can make adjustments if we need to. But I guess it's 7 months out. I can't foresee anything coming up.
I have something scheduled actually the 13th, but something tells me it might be delayed if COVID continues, but I do have something on that day.
Yeah.
Mr. McDonald, the only concern I have, and before I jump into Deputy Mayor Warden, is having it on the 13th. I presume you're looking for both days, the 13th and the 27th. Is that what your options were?
Yes.
Okay, and the reason I guess I'm looking at questioning the 13th is that means Deputy Mayor Warden and I would be off the 13th and the 16th, which is the following Monday. So it's just pulling 2 days, back to back in regards to our working opportunity. So I'm not sure what Deputy Mayor Warden's comments would be on that, but I'll let him speak at this point.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, that we do have county council on that the following Monday, and there is a chance that the 13th will be either the Warden's banquet or Lauren Crest dinner if life gets back to normal. I just liked the idea that it was on our agenda, and I liked the fact that I mean, we've said for years I'd like to see our budgets start earlier, and I just wanted to give a nod to that. You're never going to have the perfect day, but I like the fact that it was on, and I thought it warranted a quick discussion. Maybe the 6th and the 20th. At this point, I checked my calendar. I don't have anything, but I just wanted to give you the nod, Lachlan. I like it that it's on the agenda now, and let's start thinking, doing our budgets earlier.
Okay, so on that regard, I'll move it tentatively to the 6th and the 20th, and then if that doesn't work, people can get back to me.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point we're okay, but it's only middle of April, so things could change as the fall comes in at later dates. But we'll leave it for that for now, the 6th and the 20th.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And the last one was the resolution support for electronic delegations. I believe that was Deputy Mayor Warden also.
Yeah, I'd just like to support this. I mean, in this, it's self-explanatory. So if it could come back at the next meeting, I think it makes sense. We got to modernize, and I think it's a great opportunity to support our friends in the Grey Highlands.
Yeah, I agree with that. Also, Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I also support it, and I'm pretty sure we did actually support this one in the past, either from them or maybe it was a different modality, but I feel like this is the same one. But definitely, it doesn't hurt to do it again.
Yeah, no, I agree. Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I was just going to say exactly what Mr. Jaworski said. I believe we did support Grey Highlands already, but I have no issue supporting it again.
Okay, thank you. So we'll ask the clerk to bring that report back at the next council meeting, and we'll support it at that point in time. Okay, so I have a motion moved by Lyle Warren, second by Stephanie Jaworski. Be resolved that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry accepts the items presented on the agenda of committee reports for information purposes only. Wasn't much left on there, but you heard the motion. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you. And now we'll move to unfinished business. Docks on township property that was dealt with this evening from council. Fire protection ponds. Mr. McDonald.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's an ongoing file, working hopefully to meet with the affected property owners this spring.
Okay, thank you. And municipal servicing from the city of Cornwall.
There will be a report on the May 4th meeting. We should have our third-party review complete by the end of this month.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And private roads development?
That has not been a priority item at this point, Mr. Mayor. It'll be carried through till the fall.
Okay, and Williamstown Garage Fire Hall, we know what's happening there. Maybe you can give a quick update to where the garage stands at this point in respect to the drawings, or?
Yeah, we'll have a meeting with the design team this Friday, and we should hopefully have a draft layout plan for council's review on the meeting for May 4th. If not, then the second meeting in May. But we're targeting the first meeting in May.
Okay, thank you. And the lead streetlights for Glen Walter?
Cornell Electric has been in discussions with us. They're working with the contractor to review the infrastructure and the inventories, and I'll be in touch with them over the next couple of weeks to see if we can keep this moving forward.
Yeah, I appreciate it. If we can keep on top of that, it would be great. And review of the waste management program?
The RFP closed on the 15th, and it will be brought to the counties at the end of the month. I'll have a report. I was targeting May 4th. I was talking to Mr. DeHaan today. It might have to be the second meeting in May when I come back with a report to council, just given the timings of the county council meetings and our meetings, and the overview of the scope of work under this RFP. So hoping for May 4th, and we'll see if we can work towards that for a report on the RFP study.
Okay, thank you. And we'll move to community services, Hamlet's signage policy. Haley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We actually had a conference call today with Noella Cottenham Sign It for the design of the signs, and she's hoping to have a subsequent draft to us in the next few days. And what we were waiting on was for her to add in the township's tagline, Ontario's Celtic Heartland, which you may recall from her presentation in November, as well as the request from the United Counties to incorporate the Where Ontario Began. So we're moving forward just slowly but surely.
Do you anticipate a report coming in May 4th or the next meeting?
I wouldn't promise one by May 4th, no.
So probably the second meeting of May?
Yes, and the reason for that is because if we still have to go back and forth on the design that she's promised to have to us in the very near future, it just means it might not work out in timing the staff reports for the May 4th deadline.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Okay, thank you. And move to corporate services, review of water rates, water bill design.
Yes, those will be coming, thank you, through me, Mr. Mayor, on May 19th. And that will give us first discussion on rate structure, and then basing on that rate structure, a letter to our constituents or water users in this case. We'll go out with graphs detailing how the water rate comes about and how to read the bill.
Okay, great, thank you. And the strategic plan action plans, I guess we kind of went through that.
Yeah, the next update through you, Mr. Mayor, would be the second meeting in June.
Okay, thank you. And the last one is fire, the civic signage project, Chief.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Oh. There we go.
Yep.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Due to we've pushed it into the May meetings, just due to the fact that tonight's meeting had a heavy agenda. So we decided we would just push it off a meeting or so. So we're still wrapping it up, but it will be ready for a subsequent meeting.
Okay, so are you thinking May 4th or the following one?
It should be May 4th. I guess it's something that we're not able to implement at the current time, right, due to COVID-19. So just due to that, we've been open to pushing it off just to facilitate heavy meetings such as agendas such as tonight. So
we appreciate that. Thank you.
Towards May. Yeah.
Okay, any questions from council? Not hearing none. I have a motion moved by Martin Lang. You know, he's giving me the thumbs up. I believe, right? Thumbs up, Lyle? Or you have a question?
Comment.
Okay.
that the last report the chief referred to, that should be referred to as the Emily Project, as opposed to the civic signage, because that little girl was killed, and that family started this whole thing. So I'd like it changed to the Emily Project, in fairness to that family, if that's okay.
Yeah, well, that's how all this came about, so I have no issue with that either.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion moved by Martin Lang, second by Sam McDonnell. Be resolved that bylaw number 23-2020 to adopt, confirm, and ratify matters dealt with by resolution be read a first, second, third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council. You heard the motion. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you. And if there's nothing else, I have a motion moved by Lyle Warden, second by Sam McDonnell. Be resolved that the council of the Township of St. Gary adjourn to the call of the chair at 10 p.m. Heard the motion. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you very much.